tell me it's 10 o'clock. So good morning all and welcome to the Children's Scrutiny budget meeting, the first one of this council, so and probably the first budget meeting that some members will have ever sort of attended. So welcome and good luck, and welcome to all our officers and cabinet members, and I'll come to Ian in a minute. I've got a little special note for Ian, but welcome all. Go through the formalities. So I've got to remind those joining remotely to mute their microphones and to turn off their camera unless speaking. Reminder to you all that the meeting is being live streamed. All speakers are asked to ensure they are talking into the microphone. The chair assumes that members have read all the papers in advance of the committee. Therefore, cabinet members and officers are asked to keep their introductions to the items brief, raising only key points to the committee. In order to facilitate questions, the chair requests, that's myself, one question per member at a time, including one supplementary follow-up, until all members have at least had one opportunity to ask a question. And please, if with the questions, can we keep them brief and to the point? I appreciate that sometimes there is some context, and the same for officers. If we can get the answers sort of as brief, that way we can get through an awful lot more work. It's a huge area across children's services. So for us to get the best value, I think keeping those questions short and those answers to the point would be very helpful. Thank you. Rolling on from that is to make sure that the questions are strategic and not down to sort of ward individual cases that you've heard. Please ensure you address everyone by their full title of councillor. I might need to be kicked about that several times. No first names, please, and a reminder to not hold individual discussions while others are speaking. So I think that brings us to item 1 and apologies. Over to you. Are you announcing those or am I announcing them? I've got them here. So I've got councillors Tilsley, Horner, Rousel and Christina Mabin. And obviously Councillor Trail will be leaving us at 11:40, and we wish you well with Sue and hope that all goes well, Jeff. And Councillor Hayward may be running late, but we'll see. Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Any at this point? Obviously, if something comes up in our conversations or discussions, wave your hands and Maria will pick that up. Thank you. Items requiring urgent attention. I'm not aware of any. Public participation. We've not been notified of any, and no members of the public present in the room. That's good. So we move swiftly on to matters for consideration or review. Item 6, children and young people's futures directorate 26 to 27. It says 2065 on my notes. That's moving into the future.
It's a bit far ahead.
Yeah. Oh, and I've missed Ian. I haven't said that. I will come to Ian in a minute. I do apologise. So welcome to Ian Hipkin from the Standards Committee. Ian's here to observe and monitor compliance with the Council's ethical governance framework. So welcome, Ian. Apologies. Thank you. So the revenue budget 26, 27 to 30, 31. So I welcome Gemma Syriac. Did I say that right? Syriac. Not bad for me. For a North Devonian, that was quite good. Welcome Jenna, and Adrian Fox, who's our head accountant, to present a technical presentation of the budget framework. And then I'm going to ask James. Blimey. We're going to ask Councillor Buzwicki. Thank you. Is that okay? Challenging. It's too early in the morning for me. But James, I invite you to introduce the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor James Buzwicki, Cabinet Member for Finance and Public Value. This report sets out the proposed Children's Services budget for 2026-27 within the wider context of the Council's overall financial position. And I want to begin briefly by framing that context. First, on the government settlement, as members will be aware, The settlement for 2026-27 continues a long-standing pattern. While there is headline growth in funding, the majority of that growth is not coming through core grant. Instead, it is driven by council tax assumptions and locally raised income. That means the council's financial position remains heavily reliant on local taxpayers to sustain services, particularly in high demand areas like children's services. Our core spending power, taken as a whole, reflects that reality. It is sufficient to set a balanced budget for the year ahead, but it does not remove the underlying structural pressures facing the system, especially around SEND placements and workforce capacity. Those pressures are not unique to Devon, and in many cases, they're the result of national policy and funding decisions rather than local choices. Turning specifically to children's services, the budget sets out in this report reflect both the scale of demand we are managing and the strategic choices the council has made. Children's remains one of the largest and fastest growing areas of spend, driven by increasing complexity, statutory responsibilities and market pressures that are largely outside the council's direct control. The approach taken here aligns with the council's strategic plan. There is a clear focus on safeguarding vulnerable children, improving outcomes, investing in early help and prevention where that is evidence-led, and strengthening sufficiency that we are less exposed to volatile external markets over time. At the same time, the report is explicit about where risks remain, particularly around SEND sustainability and the pace at which savings assumptions can be delivered. This is therefore not a report that claims that all challenges are resolved, but it is realistic and it sets a realistic budget for the year ahead, grounded in what we know, honest about what we do not yet control, and clear about the strategic direction of travel. Mr. Chairman, I'll now hand over to Adrian Fox, our head accountant for inclusion and learning, to take members through the structure of the report, including the service budget, assumptions and risks. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, Chair. The Scrutiny Pack presents the budget proposal in respect of the children and young people's futures. The key tables within these papers will form the basis of the information presented in the published annual budget book. The introductory report sets out the 2026-27 target budget of £839.2 million for the whole of the authority as agreed by Cabinet on the 14th of January 2026. More specifically for this meeting, for the children and young people's futures, the overall target is £268 million, which is a net increase of £19.1 million or 7.7% compared to the 25-26 budget. For children's social care, the target is £199 million, a net increase of £18.3 million or 10.1%. For the inclusion and learning services general fund, the target is £69 million, a net increase of £795,000 or 1.2%. On pages 1 to 16, the introductory and commentary provisional local government settlement for 2026 and the equality impact assessment sections of the introductory report are relevant to all committees. The service specific budget issues and capital programme are relevant for this committee. The report is followed by the senior leadership commentary, which sets out the scene for the council as a whole, and these are on pages 17 and 18. Additionally, individual directorates have their own commentary summarising the services provided, their performance and any significant challenges faced. Each directorate has a summary table demonstrating how the 2026-27 budget has been built up on page 20, and an analysis of the total expenditure on page 21, and funding streams, which goes on to the list of any self-funded services and the relevant statistical information. The service statistics highlight key activity drivers, identifying the impacts on activity that plans and assumptions informing the budgets are expected to have. The papers include financial detail at service level through pages 22 to 33, showing how the 26-27 revenue budget has been constructed and explaining key movements for the current year. These will include the estimated impact of inflation, national living wage, demographic growth, contractual or legislative pressures, and any other service development or investment. Likewise, it will list proposed savings plans that inform the budget. Assumptions and estimates, including those for income generation, have been developed with operational senior management teams. Any significant risks to achievement or potential volatility are highlighted on the service-by-service basis in the risk assessment section of the Scrutiny Pack, pages 39 to 49. Please note that anywhere figures are shown in brackets, it indicates that they are either income or a reduction in expenditure, both of which have the same effect on reducing the net budget. Towards the back of the scrutiny pack are consolidated tables detailing grants Devon County Council has agreed to issue to external organisations and an analysis of the staffing data. In addition to the 26-27 revenue budget, the medium-term capital programme is also included on pages 36 to 38. It is worth noting that the annual budgets may not total the scheme approval figure, as the scheme may span a period outside the current 5-year programme. For convenience, the final pages of the scrutiny pack provide a list of abbreviations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Adrian, and probably a good moment for me to sort of thank Angie and everybody that was involved in all this, but Adrian in particular, my memory is terrible. Gemma, thank you, and thank you, Angie. So thank you ever so much for all that you've done, and when you read through these papers, you realise how much work goes into it. So a massive thanks on behalf of all the committee and officers. Richard, did you want to say anything at this point? Thank you. Councillor Jeffries, apologies.
Again. Are we on now? Great. I think we've gone through that, and just to welcome some of the lines in the budget that will strengthen the service and produce better outcomes, particularly ones that are continuing with improvement processes, like looking at staff retention and that kind of area, that are things that will grow the service year on year. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. That's helpful. And I don't know if the Chief Executive or any of the other senior officers to my left want to come in. Thank you. Donna.
There's a two-part approach. Firstly, I would like to contribute as my role as Head of Paid Service and representing the staff group. First thing I have to say is this is the most comprehensive, going into my 4th year here, the most comprehensive budget process between finance, children's and political leaders that I've observed. It's been intense, it's comprehensive, and it is a one council approach. What I want to just say before we go into the bit where Becky Hopkins, who leads the whole practice improvement and outcomes and improvement agenda for children's social care, will comment on how this budget is directly linked to the additional investment we've received from government and the Family First reform. So I'll leave Becky to do that, but what I want to signal is how important the getting best value out of my colleagues and the staff group, and the link between what Becky will say about making a difference to children and families out there, and actually what's my responsibility to make sure the staff are doing their best job, is to make that direct link. So we now have moved in this directorate from a 51% permanent workforce to an 86% permanent workforce. We have in this directorate in 1 quarter last year saved £600,000 on agency spend in 1 quarter. So the link between the permanent workforce and the value for money is absolutely able to evidence that. We have reduced the interim workforce by 71% in the last 2 years. The sickness absence in this directorate in the last year has reduced by 7.66% to 2.89% sickness, our best levels in the council in this directorate. That means 940 days additional working by staff. Those are some of the outcomes that we've got by putting people first. And what this budget will allow us to do is to strengthen that even further, so that we deliver best value. But I'll hand over to Becky now, because it's understanding actually that if we have the right staff in the right place doing the right jobs, it's all about improving the outcomes. And we have evidence recently, huge month by month improvement that will come to this afternoon in terms of that difference for children and families. But you have my absolute commitment that that journey for the staff and doing our very best is really important, and in demonstrating best value.
No, it's okay. Oh, yeah, I think we're okay. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Chair. And yes, just to reiterate that from our perspective in children's social care, this is a really positive budget for us. And what it will enable us to do is to continue to drive forward our improvement as part of our Families First plan, which many of you will be aware of, and links directly to the Families First reforms which are being delivered nationally this year, and enables us to continue to deliver on our ambition, which is to enable our children and families in Devon to thrive, and to support our children and young people to remain within their families, within their communities and within their networks wherever possible. And if we're not able to do that, that we're able to care for them again within their local areas, so that they're not experiencing multiple changes of trusting relationships and people that they're connected to. So some of the key, I guess some of the key headlines in terms of the budget, just going to the Families First reforms first, is our focus on family-led decision making. That has always been a strength in Devon. So we already have a really strong family group conferencing service. And as part of this budget, we're able to expand that service further. So our intention is to have family group conferencing teams in each of the 3 localities across the county. And we will also be extending our lifelong links service. So our vision is that no child will come into our care without the offer of a family group conferencing meeting. The idea being that we get that opportunity to really make sure we've explored all options for them before they come into our care, and that no child will leave our care without at least 2 trusting relationships that will be able to continue to support them as they grow into adulthood or continue through their childhood. So this budget enables us to deliver and expand those services. The budget also enables us to grow our front door, so grow the capacity in the front door to ensure that we're making those family-led decisions, and that we've got the time and the capacity to have those conversations with families at that earliest opportunity, and we're really making sure that we understand their situation. And to further expand our targeted early help, so our family intervention service. That will not only enable us to further reduce the need for families to sometimes wait for those services, but also to bring together the social work teams and the family intervention team, again, as part of the Families First reforms. The other key part of our transformation is around our Growing Futures programme. And you'll see from the budget that there are huge opportunities in there in relation to our ability to grow our fostering service. So investment in our fostering offer, financial investment, but also investment in terms of paying foster carers, but also investment in terms of the support offer to them. So that covers the recruitment and retention of foster carers. There's investment in our kinship care service, linking directly to the Families First reforms and the idea of family-led decision making, keeping children within their families and communities. We do quite well already in Devon around enabling children to remain with family members where possible. This will enable us to go even further, and also to support children to return home where possible. The Growing Futures programme also includes a plan to commission a strategic partner who we will build more children's homes with together in Devon, again, to enable our children to remain close so that we can support them in their education, in their relationships, and obviously to thrive within their communities. And then finally, in the Growing Futures programme, we'll also be recommissioning our services for young people aged 16 and over to ensure that they, again, have suitable accommodation in the local area that can meet their needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Becky, and all those that have spoken so far. And I sort of, just some opening comments, I guess, from me, and new to this role as well, and it's sort of a privilege, I guess, as chair, is that you do get to meet officers outside of the meetings, and what's clearly come across to me in those meetings and cabinet members and leadership is that unbelievable commitment that goes into all this. And there's a real passion that I don't know if I didn't feel it before because I was just on the back benches, if you like, but I did meet with officers before, and I just feel that there's a different atmosphere completely. And I sort of piggybacked on Julian's visit to North Devon yesterday, and so sorry about that, Julian, but thank you very much for coming up to North Devon and you know, meeting the teams up there. I think it means a lot to them when people, you know, we always feel like on a limb in North Devon. So, but I think, you know, they're saying things like that they feel a lot better supported. You know, we talked to a couple of apprentices who you know, talked about the wonderful support they'd had from their managers, and it just feels like there's a whole different atmosphere every time I go into Torview. Don't get me wrong, they still have their niggles and their moans and their concerns, but you know, overall there is a good, and this budget I think indicates, you know, we've got by far the biggest increase, if you like. It's still probably nowhere near enough to really meet the need, but you know, we have got one of the biggest, you know, well, the biggest increase in a service area. So I guess our job now is to make sure that money is spent wisely and question officers. So with that, I'd sort of just remember, members, that we're dealing with social care at the moment, and then in a little while we'll go over to education and learning, and we'll hear from Denise and Jack. So if we can sort of focus our questions on social care to start with, and I guess I'll open it up to members if there's any questions, or if there's any initial questions on the overview of the budget. Okay, so Councillor Lodge, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo what you said in terms of the hard work that's gone into this budget. It's very clear, and the direction of travel is hugely positive. So well done to everybody. This is a question about, you've just mentioned fostering, and I know the government is going to announce their direction of travel in terms of fostering, but that's also true for SEND. Does this council engage with Westminster on issues like that? Do we have any influence in that area? Do we hear any whispers of what might come out in terms of fostering? Because that's got to be crucial in terms of you being able to plan and prepare your resources and plans around those areas.
Yes, we do engage wherever the opportunities arise for us. You know, I guess we anticipate that whatever comes through in terms of fostering will be positive, because obviously there is a real commitment nationally to increase the number of foster carers and to enable children to have that opportunity to experience a positive family life. In terms of, there's a strong regional group that will be part of any feedback around any further changes or reforms that are coming through nationally. We know that there will be a focus on regional collaboration in terms of the recruitment and retention of foster carers. There are already regional hubs that we are part of in Devon around that initial recruitment phase of a foster carer's journey to becoming approved. So yes, in answer to your question, we do engage with any opportunities that present to us nationally, and I'm sure Donna might want to say a little bit more.
You know, I think one of the positives of being in an improvement programme, which we welcome, is the fact that we have commissioners working with us. So we have our commissioner who's linked in to the minister, but we also have retained our previous commissioner as an external partner, and they're very linked into national developments and being driven in terms of fostering. So that's really helpful in our meetings, that we get that update from both the external commissioner and our official commissioner. I think it's important to note as well, and the cabinet leads might comment, but I'm delighted that we've got the opportunity to meet the minister in a few weeks' time to discuss directly with the children's minister what we're doing in Devon, specifically around the Family First reforms and that policy change and focus on what has been stated in ministerial policies. And I'll let cabinet leads talk a bit more about that, but that opportunity to have that direct contact with the minister is fantastic. And I'd also say that we have colleagues on the department in terms of civil servants that engage with us. You know, I was engaged with them earlier this week. And there is a sense of everybody working together. So yeah, it's good and it's positive.
Thank you. Richard, you look like you're ready. Councillor Jeffries, apologies, I'll get there.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, making connections with government policy is something that I'm very keen on, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to meet with the minister, and also to engage in that way, and I'll be asking for a visit to Devon to see how the family first reforms particularly can be implemented in our large rural areas. So some of the to explore the opportunities, and also to see some of the challenges of implementing those in a dispersed area with a lower population density.
Thank you. I'll just whip in with a quick one of myself. It's a bit more of an overview of the whole budget. Obviously, like I've said, we've got an increase in budget, and but obviously within that budget, as I read it, and I say that, poor old Matt's looking at me now, what's he going to come out with? But as I read it, there's a 6.9 million of savings as well on children's outcomes, service and quality. And what are the key risk areas that could affect delivery within that? Thank you. That's a sort of. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you. The key risk areas will be if we're unable to deliver in terms of the development of our children's homes as planned, and also if we're unable to deliver in terms of an increase of foster carers in-house in Devon. And I guess the other key area will be around our workforce, and if there are any difficulties around the continuation of the positive progress that we've made around permanent recruitment. So they will be the two key areas. It will be around children's placements and children's workforce.
Thank you. Can I just come back on that point? Because obviously we've had myself and Julian met two apprentices yesterday that were just full of praise for the support and help they had, but they led us to believe that they were the last sort of chance, and that was in 2023. So obviously growing that next generation, if you like, for the want of a better word, are we sort of looking to keep a regular apprentices coming through the line, and also we've always sort of concentrated in that southwest region around retention and making sure we keep our own staff, but it's an open world now, isn't it, and as well as an open country, and as I understand it, we're competing against lots of other areas around the whole country on being able to retain our staff, and how are we sort of monitoring our retention packages, our sort of packages to welcome people to Devon. Thank you.
So there are various pipelines into social work, and the apprenticeship route is one of them, which we are just currently in the process of reviewing, because that information is correct, and we're looking at how we can re-engage with that. But there are various other different routes which newly qualified social workers will come through, and we recruit social workers internationally as well. So we are doing all options, both locally, nationally and internationally, in terms of social work recruitment. I think one of the really positive stories for us in Devon is that our narrative about what it feels like and the experience of working with Devon is, and we are certainly getting regular feedback from people who come to work with us in Devon that their experience is a really positive one. They are telling us others, and we know that narrative has really shifted to the narrative that was around 2 to 3 years ago, and I think we're really benefiting from that now. We're hearing it regularly. We also know that our recruitment and advertising material and the brand Do It for Devon is really working. We're hearing that regular feedback too. We have a recruitment and retention board that meets on a regular basis, where we work and meet with our HR colleagues and review everything that's happening that's working well, that we might need to tweak. I think there's a couple of really good examples where we've reviewed and refreshed our newly qualified social worker programme and extended that from 1 year to 2, based on the feedback that people just needed that support for a longer period. We needed to invest differently in what that support looked like, so we launched that at the beginning of this financial year. And we also have a specific recruitment and retention programme that's running in the north of the county at the moment, because we know that's the most challenging area for us in terms of permanent recruitment. So we've got some specific, I guess, you know, we've got some specific things in place to hopefully make it more attractive for people to come and live and work in North Devon. So we're targeted, but we're also looking at the whole county.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Carson, Councillor Julian, and then Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. On the service statistics, we've got this year we've got 913 children in care, dropping by 88 to 825 next year. And I see there's a bit of an increase for those at 18 plus, which that makes logical sense. But we don't seem to be taking into account any new children coming into the system, or have we?
The microphones are like me; they're great once they're up and running.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. So we use quite a sophisticated methodology to predict what that number of children in care is going to look like in future years, and we've had help from our partners at Empower this year as well to help to predict that. So that decrease that we've seen from 25-26 to 26-27 is largely what's happened this year. So we have seen quite a significant reduction in the number of children in care, but the modelling that we use does predict something for the future. So it does predict that that number is going to go up slightly, not very much. So there is some risk around that, but there is something built in for that future demand. Okay.
I'll just piggyback on. Oh, Tony, if you got
just a quick supplementary. So where were those children going then that are dropping out of the system?
So some of those children will have reached the age of 18. Some of those children will have returned home. Some of those children might have moved to live with family or possibly even friends. And then we are also obviously working much earlier with children and families to prevent the need for children to come into our care. Some children will of course have been adopted as well. So there will be children will have left our care through various different routes, but we're also working really hard to prevent the need for children coming into our care too.
So the family first initiative is actually working then, is what you're saying?
Families, yes, and absolutely, and our our own vision within the service, which aligns perfectly with the Families First reforms, has been for the last 2 to 3 years that we will primarily, our focus will be on supporting children to remain at home with their families, and working with concern and risk in a different way. So really working with families to understand what's going on, to help them be part of their own planning. They know themselves best. They can tell us what will work for them, and if we can work in that way, we're less likely to have to bring children into our care. And I guess just to reassure, that decline has been over a period of time as well. So we've been monitoring it and keeping an eye on it.
I can sort of support Becky here a little bit. I mean, I think I might get my figures wrong, but Becky will put me right. I know I met with the Bridges team recently-ish, and they were telling me that they're sort of a relatively new team, 2 or 3 years old, and they supported around 100 families last year and successfully kept 87%, I think it was, they said, but I guess that's, if they're supporting 100 families, it's 87 young people that managed to stay with their families. So huge success. So I think that that was sort of something that I heard that sort of supports what Becky was saying, so quite reassuring. Sorry, Councillor Julian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. About Councillor Lodge there, about the fostering. I mean, as we know, it's on its knees, and we've got to pick it up. I just wondered if this is in the budget where we're going to increase for fostering families, and also with more increase, obviously, with the fostering, more money to keep to retain the fostering families, and also for social care. So I'm only asking, is there an increase for this? Because obviously we're going to hopefully strive forward to make it a better place here. And I know we want to keep it in Devon, and I know that there's a non-for-profit agency that we've got, but the profit agency, I hope we're going to nail it to increase, so we don't have this vast expenditure, because as soon as they see Devon, put the price up. Do you understand what I'm saying? So is this penciled in the budget, Chair? Thank you.
Yes, so the increase in foster carers' fees and allowances is included within the budget. Absolutely, and that will align us more closely with fees and allowances that are paid by other local authorities, and within that we're also reviewing our support offer more generally to foster carers. So so that it's more than just the increase in fees and allowance, so that we want them to feel part of our team. We want to, I guess, remove some of the things that they find difficult, that they see as barriers in relation to fostering.
That sounds good, Chair. Let's hope it moves forward like that. That'd be good.
Yeah, yeah, it is good. I think it was 3.2 million, the extra. So I guess it's a good question. How are we going to track the success of that, and how will it come back through scrutiny?
So the success will be tracked through the Growing Futures transformation programme, which includes all of the activity in relation to increasing the number of homes in Devon that we have for our children. So that will be the strategic board that tracks the progress, and we will be able to report regularly on how that's going.
Who's next? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, I hope this isn't going to be a stupid question. I really do. I'm used to dealing with numbers in millimoles rather than millions. So to go back slightly, where we're talking about recruitment and retention, it's a question of categorization, if you don't mind. These are, to my eye, are two very different things. Recruitment is essential, and I know that we're making big savings on agency staff and we're bringing in more recruitment, which is fantastic. But retention feels to me to be a very different thing, and I would almost like to see the two values separated so we can really get to know, because it's almost like hatchings and dispatchings. We don't want dispatchings, obviously, but we want to retain the staff we've got. But I think the recruitment is in some ways a reflection of the failure to retain, in others not. But it'd be very useful to have these numbers separated, and then we can see how much is going into the retention of staff, and as a consequence, how much is going into the getting the new ones in. Thank you.
Yes, I don't have that information to hand today, but we can absolutely do that. And I guess just to offer some reassurance, we do know that our turnover rates, and I think Donna mentioned the figure earlier, have significantly reduced in children's social care over the last 2 to 3 years. And also in relation to retention, we've really developed our learning and development offer. We've got a really strong social work academy now that includes learning and development for our alternatively qualified staff, and that we go from strength to strength with that. And we've also got a development programme that is being supported by our sector-led improvement partners, which includes the recommendations that were made by our Department for Education Commissioner, directly linked to the reforms. So as well as financial reward, there's an awful lot of work going into making sure that our staff feel supported and able to do their jobs confidently. And I guess the other area is well-being and making sure that they feel looked after and that we're responding to their needs.
No, that's fantastic, because of course every member of staff has a large training and induction cost, and the more that we keep, the less that we spend in that direction. Thank you very much. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Richardson. I think it's the third attempt it works.
We're on now. Perfect. Thank you, Chair. My question's along the same lines as Councillor Bell, and it's on the grow your own strategy. I just wonder if you could delve a bit more into that strategy. When we talk about retention, is that focused on retaining agency workers as well? So are we going to be investing some of that £2.2 million additional budget into bringing agency staff on permanently? Obviously, agency staff already have experience and things, but there'll still be that additional cost in giving them Devon County Council tailored training. And can you also explain a bit more about how that £2.2 million is going to be used with apprenticeships and early careers, and if any of that budget as well is also going to be trying to attract staff from other local authorities?
Thank you. So the simple answer is yes. So the recruitment and retention programme includes a number of various aspects to it. So there is the Grow Our Own in terms of our newly qualified social workers, which includes various different routes in, and what is now a quite intensive supportive programme that we're really proud of in Devon and are receiving positive feedback about. It does include work to transfer locums to permanent members of staff. We've seen some real success there over the last 12 to 18 months. Work with our HR colleagues has borne fruit. So we've seen social workers and team managers convert into permanent staff, and that has enabled us to move to the position that we're in actually around our team manager, our permanent team manager workforce, which I think is now below 20% locum. So that's fantastic news. And it does also include obviously external recruitment, both to management and social work and alternatively qualified practitioner roles. So I think all of those things we are reaping the rewards from now, and that is helping us to generate that really positive narrative that I talked about. We are supportive of apprenticeships in children's social care, so we've increased the number of apprenticeships that we offer, and that includes offering those to our care experienced young people. And have I answered all of your questions there? Was there anything else? Sorry.
I think once again, I'll back you up here, because I think myself and Julian heard it yesterday, and I think certainly picked up on it in our visit to Exeter. The staff were really pleased that they now have consistent, what are they called? Agency managers. They were all permanent staff, and they said that has made a tremendous difference.
Yeah, it's great to hear about that focus on trying to bring care experience individuals in as well. So yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, I've got Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Trail. I missed those closest to me, so I apologise to you both. Oh, Councillor Trail, sorry.
Thank you very much. Well, it was a pleasure to actually go up and meet the staff the other week, and it was great to see the newly qualified apprentices, and I'd like to see if that could be continued, but I know it's difficult because you've got one of your permanent staff that has still got to do her own job along with the apprentices. So perhaps in the future that could be improved with a full-time trainer and internal verifiers and that to assist. But my question is, has there been an agreement with the unions and staff regarding pay increases for next financial year? And will there be a review of terms and conditions of employment for social workers? And with that, has that been costed into this financial budget? Please.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you, Chair. So as far as the pay awards go, the County Council, along with all local authorities, is part of a national pay negotiation. So we don't negotiate locally with our own staff. It's a national pay negotiation. That negotiation has started. Within the budget in front of you, we've allowed 2% increase for all pay lines. But as I say, it's a national negotiation. It typically is not complete by the 1st of April. So sometime during next year, agreement will be made between the employer side and the staff side. And typically that pay is then backdated to the 1st of April. Even though we've allowed for 2%, if the settlement, the agreement was say 3%, then the County Council will honour that and deal with any additional cost across the whole authority as we do with any budget pressures. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Connor, sorry, I missed you up in that corner as well.
Excuse me, can I come back?
I do apologise. Councillor Trail.
So that's the pay. What about a review of terms and conditions, please?
So no, there are no reviews at the moment of pay in terms and conditions, just the normal annual uplift.
Okay, so I take this, we'll have to bring this back to scrutiny, not today.
But I think it
in
sort
the
of
future.
it probably relates to my question around retention and packages and that sort of side of things, Jeff, as well, Councillor Trail as well. So yeah, I think we'll probably pick that up and look at it either as part of a recommendation later or the work programme. Donna, yeah.
I think it would be helpful if we can come back to that in terms of offer us a budget proceeds information on what's happening with paying conditions and the work we do locally with the trade unions and where we are with that in terms of links with LGR. But in this budget process, my assessment is that there are no significant changes taking place at this moment in time. But I think I would refer that back and ask that we maybe get clarity on that for next step in the budget process from the Director of People and Culture and pick that up as an action point.
Thank you, Councillor Trail. I think it's a really good point. And Councillor Connor, sorry to miss you again.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the tour we had the other week, and meeting the new recruits was great, and hearing their stories. The apprenticeship route to social work's brilliant. My question was about the agency staff. Do we, or have we ever kept our own pool of bank staff, social workers? I don't know if there was ever some heyday in the past of abundant social workers, because I know the problem is actually that there are, or a lot of the problem is that there just aren't enough of them. But was that ever something we kept in the past or something we could look at in the future?
It's not something that I'm aware Devon has ever had in the past, and it's not something that I'm aware that other local authorities have necessarily had, other than perhaps peripatetic teams that can move around local authorities. I wouldn't necessarily think that it's something we need to consider at this point in Devon. Our recruitment is going really, really well. We recruit social workers into specific teams and specific localities to align with where they live and where they want to be, which is working, is working well for us at the moment.
You got a follow up, Councillor? Sorry, I was busy sort of reading something there. I do apologise that related to it. Councillor Wilson.
Not prepared. Thank you, as everyone else has said, for this really thorough budget report and for all the work that's gone into it. I wanted to ask about the Growing Futures programme, just to really find out a bit more about how it's going to be measured, because obviously the whole point is it's going to reduce external placement costs. So what are the ways that you're going to measure the performance of the Growing Futures programme? Thank you.
Thank you. So there'll be a number of key indicators that the programme is focused on. So, for example, the number of children that are placed in foster care provision locally, ideally in-house, the number of foster carers that are recruited to care for our children in Devon, the number of children that are living locally. So we'll be hoping that we see that number of children living in the local area and within 20 miles of their home increasing, the number of children that are placed in kinship care arrangements, so arrangements with within their family networks. And like I said in answer to a previous question, we'll monitor that through the Growing Futures programme. And we'll obviously be monitoring cost along with our finance colleagues as well.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question? It's really evident, obviously, fostering is a key part of this transformation, but there is a risk element because it is proving difficult, or to recruit foster carers. So how is the risk there being mitigated? Thank you.
So we have been relatively cautious in terms of our predictions in terms of numbers of foster carers that we plan to recruit, and that is alongside the current trend, which is of a declining number of foster carers. So we have factored that risk into those calculations, haven't we? I don't know if you want to add any, Jen. No? Okay, thank you.
I guess I got a whole list of questions here, and I was sort of making sure that members had a bite before I hogged it all. But I'll come in. But if Lou or Matt's can keep an eye on members, if there's somebody that's got another question, please say, because I've got a few. So what portion of the budget is dedicated to the early intervention and prevention service, and how is this monitored for impact?
Okay, so the budget papers as they stand don't actually break down that spend into a nice clear category of prevention services. What I can point to is a budget of 5.4 million on family health. I can also point to a budget of 3.9 million on early help and partnerships. And the other element that I would point towards is the 1.4 million pound new investment, which is going into Families First, which is also focused on prevention services. So don't have that detailed breakdown with the budget papers, but some key areas that will come through to councillors as part of the budget pack.
And obviously, that is good, and like I say, we generally welcome them, but obviously what we're really going to need to be able to do, see as we go forward, is the impact that's having. So how are we going to measure that?
Thank you, Chair. Just I think the question there, we tried to split up recruitment and retention a minute ago, and they're intimately linked. I think this is a similar situation, and I think it's more around practice changes in the family, particularly in the family first. I mean, I'm sure Becky can give me the correct language to use in this one, but it's about shifting the practice to earlier intervention as well. So if it was if we go back to the recruitment and retention thing, if you just put some money into recruitment and you didn't think about retention, but if you put something into that's both of those but tilted towards creating better practice, you get the effect out of that system. I don't know if that helps, and if Becky wants to hone that.
No, absolutely agree, and it is about that left shift, as we're calling it, so that move to much earlier help for children and families. And I guess what we'd expect to see in terms of impact is more children and families being supported through family help, so through targeted early help. We'd expect to see a reduction in the number of children subject to child protection plans. We'd expect to see hopefully over time a continued reduction in the number of children in our care as well. So the idea being that more children and families are supported much earlier in the system.
Anybody that's listened to me over the last 10 years will know that I really do welcome that, and absolutely the right way to go. Like I say, I think it's just something that we do need to measure and watch and see how that does move forward and impact. But it's brilliant. And did I see sorry, I've got Donna twitching to my left, but go on, Becky, and then I'll come to
I guess just to add, Chair, we're already really proud of what we've achieved in relation to our vision in Devon to support children and families earlier and to support them to remain with their families and communities. So as I've said before, the Families First reforms really enhance what we're able to do. But we've been on this journey now for 2 or 3 years, and we're beginning to see the impact in terms of those numbers and that front loading of intervention and support that obviously everybody has been really supportive of.
And absolutely, I mean, as I said, I've sort of quoted the Bridges team, so I assume that's all part of that programme, and
absolutely,
and there really are some fantastic success stories. Donna.
Yeah, just for clarification, there are no significant changes planned in terms of terms and conditions, but we did introduce a welcome payment for staff recently, so we can get that information to you. you know, this afternoon we look at all the KPIs as part of our normal scrutiny, and those KPIs are there for a reason, and they all add in to that bit about staffing, capability, capacity, and quality. You know, and you know, one of the fundamental ones that's a line of sight for myself are caseloads, vacancies. So there's absence rates. I mentioned some of them earlier, but you have to mix them all together. I think in response, I would agree perhaps we need to signpost what we are putting into that early help and prevention, because that is what will create the shift. 3 years ago, we had no early help service in Devon. We now have a strong and improving early help service, but that was a fundamental miss. 3 years on, I think we should consider how to put this in the budget pack. It's not just about the early help service, it's about what's the mix of the early help service, because our families have complexities. So if you want to hear a risk for myself in the budget, then the whole focus is on that multi-agency partnership. So our Director of Public Health and the work he has done, we have put in domestic abuse staff into that place. The police, we've changed our processes, and because that front door is that critical entry point of whether we escalate families up the system or whether we can provide really good quality support and early help or multi-agency working. So I still think a risk in that place is I have in writing assurance based on the KPIs and the improvement work we're doing from Police Constable that they will fully support our family first reforms and be involved in that. I do not have that assurance from NHS Devon at this moment in time. And a key part to that shift that Becky's talking about is making sure that mental and emotional health and support for families with, you know, all aspects of that is in that front door as well. So that's still an area that we have worked through every team that provides a service to children. That's the work that Becky, Gemma, myself, the Cabinet leads have all been involved in the last few months. And to me, that's still a gap in being able to make that system shift, that our families get that technical health support that we are unable to provide. And it will become part of the SEND discussion this morning as well. That's still a gap in Devon in terms of how we make that happen. But I think it's good feedback for us to think about how we signpost that real mix that's required to support our families. And the bridges is part of that. The other piece of work we do with our care leavers is part of that in terms of lifelong links. So I think signposting the services we've put in, but also separating out where we need to strengthen. I really think you're absolutely on it in asking those questions. So I just think we need to take that away. And I'm just hoping I've got the retention.
Yeah, obviously just a quick rain check on that.
And also just to say to you a bit about retention, we call it turnover rate. The Director of People and Culture has just said to me that we had a 23% turnover rate in social care in September 23. That has gone down to 11% in May 2025, and I'm sure it's improved since then, but we will get the most accurate up-to-date figures. But that means, again, our turnover rate has reduced by over 50%. I think it'll probably be up about 60% at the moment. So that is really important too. But what I would say is we don't want to be in a position now when we look at recruitment or retention. Our staff have got to be doing the best job. So it's not just about numbers, it's about quality. And actually the key for me is making sure that our audits, which is another KPI you look at, our audits of practice and also our supervision of our staff is all happening to make sure that it's not just about having a member of staff, it's about having the best staff. And that's where you know, I'm delighted that what will come through in time to Cabinet shortly is our recent staff survey results in terms of some really good progress there in terms of how our staff are about feeling valued in this council and statistics around that. And I kind of, spoiler alert, all the indicators have gone in the right direction, and I'm delighted about that. But that to me is about staff value, staff commitment and staff quality, and we need to make sure that we mix that into this as well. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Donna. I think it's always difficult as a Children's Scrutiny Committee because, you know, I think we do absolutely recognise the green shoots and the, you know, fantastic stuff that's going on, but at the same time, our role is to question. So I guess picking up on what you've just said, I guess, how do you, you know, because you are relying on partners as well and everybody else to play their bit, and how do we recognise that in risk, you know, when you look across the risk assessment, because, you know, to me, you're relying on a lot of stars to line up. But I think picking up on the retention and the figures there and that drop, which is just quite incredible actually, because, you know, I think my police officer friend of mine will shoot me because we've quite often argue about this when we're down the pub, is that, you know, for me, social workers do the most incredible job, hard job. You know, they're you know, out there sometimes in the middle of nowhere with some of the most complex sort of broken families all on their own. So, you know, I think there's always going to be, fortunately, I guess for the want of a better word, a bit of burnout, and yeah, but so I think those figures are quite incredible actually, because yeah, for me it's got to be the toughest job going, but there we go. But yeah, I suppose my main thing there was, can we even recognise that in our KPIs and our risk profile?
Finally, it's popping in because you've asked a question and they're excellent questions. So one of the best indicators for myself is we've had because of the way that it's worked nationally, you know, the agency has been, it's a key national driver to stabilise the workforce nationally in social care. And, you know, there's been lots of reasons why that's been really complex. So there's been local work and national work to address it. But the last indicator that I've just received is that 47 agency staff have converted to the permanent workforce in Devon in the last year. That's another key indicator, because there is a bit where, you know, just because of how it works regionally, lots of staff do tend to stay in that agency space, but to see that commitment, I think, is 47 people changing to be that commitment to Devon, that's what we really need to make happen. And that's a bit about how much we support them, or people like members going up to thank social care staff for the job that they do. Those are the kind of things that do make a difference.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree. And I think Lou's just sort of pointed out to me that there is a section on that, and perhaps it's something we pick up in our work programme. I'm going to go to Councillor Hookway, then Councillor Bell, even though the hands are the other way around, just that Councillor Hookway hasn't yet asked a question. So.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to look at a different area, if I may, with your permission. It's a bit more specific. It's not quite so strategic. I'm looking at page 30 on the report, the inclusion and learning school funding section.
Can I just stop you, Nick? Because we will, obviously this section is just concentrating on social care.
All right.
Shortly, we're going to have a little break, and then we will welcome Jack and Denise, and they're going to talk to us about inclusion and learning. So, yeah, I do apologise, but don't worry, we're not neglecting inclusion and learning or Jack or Denise. So,
all right. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Just with regards to homelessness, I noticed there is within the grant figures, I mean, I always want to ask the question of how much money is spent on getting all of the grants, because of course, the core funding isn't set up, but that's by the by. Within the grants, I think we've got 1.8 million being allocated to homelessness, which is fantastic, and related problems. And within that, I think we're spending £105,000 on parts of the service where we're really focused on preventing homelessness among our care leavers and that 16 to 25 group. Of course, how are we funding, homelessness is, picked up at an adult level, but families are homeless, and of course with children, we've got a lot of under 16-year-olds who tragically are being made homeless, across the area. Are we looking at these, and are we providing some sort of funding into this that we're taking care of the younger homeless people?
In terms of our 16, 17 homeless young people, yes, we work with our district colleagues to ensure that we have suitable accommodation for those young people if they need it. We also have a support service that sits around them to work with them and with their families, because ideally the best thing is if we can support them to remain within their families. But yes, we do then have a support offer for those 16 and 17-year-olds if they do need accommodation, and that is that is a service that we work closely with district colleagues on. In terms of families with younger children, from a children's social care perspective, we don't provide accommodation, but again, we will work with housing officers and colleagues elsewhere to support those families and make sure that those children's needs are being met in whatever way they need to.
No, thank you very much, because yeah, of course, the care leavers are, certainly I only know from North Devon, but I know they're superbly cared for and given all of the support they need. But it is those, I see many in my role in North Devon, I see many families with younger children who are being moved away from their own education. Of course, the long-term benefit is a 60% chance of PTSD in those children going into their future lives and reduced life chances. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think also, obviously, just remember the what do you call it? We did a little review back before Christmas on this, and had a report back in November. So we have done a bit of work on this, but you're right to raise it. Angie.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add some clarity around the line that's in the budget narrative at the start of the pack around the domestic abuse and homelessness grant, the 1.8 million that was referenced. That is for the county council, not for homelessness. Homelessness grants go normally to district councils because we're two-tier. So that 1.8 million is domestic abuse rather than homelessness. I just wanted to add that clarity. I think the Chief Executive would like to come in, Chair, as well.
However, back to doing the right thing for children, we have been working on homelessness, fully focused on it with our district colleagues for a while now. Another full session next week on this with everybody in the room. So everybody's really trying hard. But if I give an example of, well, what do we spend on homelessness? So we made a decision that we would have zero tolerance to any young people going to bed and breakfast. That's the commitment we made with this new administration earlier this year. We have maintained that at zero. Implications, though, is that we've likely to have spent nearly £1 million as figures in making that happen. So that was one of those areas that when people say, what's the budget for homelessness, then that's not in a budget line anywhere. That's a bit about council doing the right thing at the right time and whole council budget accommodating that. But I think it's correct that we begin to add up all the things that we do in children's and adults where we do it, it's the right thing at the right time, and the whole council budget accommodates it, because what we get in a grant or what's set out in paperwork doesn't quite capture that bit where we just do the right thing. So there's, £1 million because it was the right thing to support those young people and find the accommodation. And actually what we found in some of those cases, when you look at that long-term invest in our young people, some of them are absolutely thriving, and some of the holiday let accommodation that we've put them into in the right environment in the right part of Devon. But you're absolutely right to point out that we don't capture that properly, and that's something we need to do. And I'll certainly be taking that kind of task into the discussions next week, because equally I've got housing colleagues and district partners who do the right thing as well. And what we spend in total in Devon on this area, I don't think is captured. So that's a task in hand.
Thank you, Donna. I think the leader would like to come in, but just sort of, it just seems for a moment for me to make comment really. I think also sit on the Land and Property Committee. And I think sometimes, you know, obviously we've got disposal targets to meet the budget. My concern, I guess, is that, you know, are we looking really carefully at what we're disposing and how that might be actually a value to what we're trying to achieve in children's, well, not children, but those young people that we're just describing. And you know, I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? But yeah, I just plant that seed really rather than anything else. But Julian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I wasn't going to come in now, but I think the homelessness has sort of spurred me to come in. Just also to add to members so they're aware that we spend £70 million a year providing accommodation for vulnerable adults as well. So when we're criticised for not supporting homelessness, I think people need to be aware that absolutely we do. And then just on the bit about, you know, we have prioritised our care leavers so they don't go in B&Bs, and it's cost us money. But, you know, I am delighted that within this budget, we have been able to make sure, and it emphasises our priority and focus on children's services, that children's have done best out of it, albeit not fantastic because money is incredibly tight, but we are laser focused on providing particularly for our most vulnerable children, and that's what this budget, you will see in your budget papers how other areas have not done as well, but children's are our top priority and we will make sure that happens. So just say thank you for all the work that everyone's done around that. I mean, it's really appreciated. I think it reflects what we as a council across the whole council have made it clear that we knew that we weren't doing a good enough job in respect of children. We must do better. We can still do a lot better because we still have a lot of legacy issues. We've got to sort those out. But I think that what we've heard here around social workers, retention, recruitment, less agency staff, more permanency is all fantastic. And I think that was reflected, Chair, with your and I visit to North Devon yesterday. And I mean, some of them were quite, you know, they weren't going to take any prisoners. But I think the overall effect that we got from that, I felt very impressed with their dedication and passion and skill and professionalism. And if we can keep that momentum going, and this budget, I think, will allow us to do that. So thank you for allowing me to say that.
No, thank you, Julia. Like I said just now, I think, you know, this, you know, we have no doubt. You know, we are thankful to the fact that we are getting that 7.7%. Was it 7.7% rise? And like you say, you know, it's not. Don't take what we're saying as complete criticism. I think it's, you know, just that we want to get in behind you and really give you that table and find even more efficiencies and savings, so that that money can be invested in young people that desperately need it. It's crucial. Councillor Carson, I've got you down again. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to go back to the Growing Futures, the 10-year strategic plan. That dreaded word, LGR. How resilient are we with our strategy if it doesn't go the way that we wish it to go? And what would happen to that strategy?
I don't see LGR as a risk at all, because I've just described it. Whether it's the work that goes on across the piece, you there was, engagement earlier this week with the leaders across Plymouth, Torbay, Devon and Cornwall. We had a very focused discussion on what we need to do and, making improvements in the area of children's. So at every level, people are working together. I've just described that districts have a strong commitment and partnership to our care leaver work. They are essential to that work. So I'm a firm believer that the local government family in Devon will keep focused on this as a priority, because actually it's about making a difference for the people of Devon. The future of whatever councils look like, that's just another navigation pathway ahead. And as we've just heard from the leader and the chair, our staff are focused on improvement. We're resetting that for 26, raising the bar in terms of what the strategic plan expects us to do. So I'm confident that local government has the capacity and capability to just deal with that as another issue. But what we're striving for is to deliver the strategic plan that this council has set us out to do, with our strong performance framework and being held to account for that. So LGR is just a thing that we do, but actually the most important thing for me next week is that meeting with the districts on this very area about making sure our children have the right homes at the right time. The LGR meeting the week after, well, that's just a thing. So, I think your support in keeping us to account on these performance indicators and going out there and feeling what it feels like out there for staff or for residents, that's the focus. It's interesting coming back in the staff survey that we're not seeing LGR as a major issue, and we're not feeling it. There will be some people that are anxious about it, but we have to mitigate that, make sure that we're focused on the tasks that we're here to do every day. So in essence, that programme will drive forward because it will be set up in a way that it will be able to work in any structure. And the partner that joins in the Homes for Children programme with us, it is for Devon. So, the structures are relevant in that place. Our children will be placed in the right place at the right time, and we'll have the right people there creating those stable, loving homes for us.
Thank you, Donna. I think I'm trying to think, I've got a few questions left here, but I've also reached the time that I wanted to ideally close this part of the session, because I need to move on to Jack and Denise, and probably want a comfort break. So I think I am going to leave it. I'll just reflect. Obviously, I guess one is more to do with the overall budget, I suppose, is the, this budget does, again, unfortunately, I mean, the government were bandying around wonderful figures, how much they were giving us in a 3-year settlement. But the fact of the matter is, it's again relying on council tax increases, and that will have an impact on families. So, and particularly those vulnerable families that live on there. So I guess I'm trying to think of how is there any way we can mitigate that? I know, like you say, it's fantastic what we're doing with foster parents, in that we're offering them that council tax in partnership with our districts and things. But I always think it's unfairest taxation, but the reality is, we've heard all the passion in the room. Absolutely want to support these children. They're the ones that probably deserve our most support, and thankfully getting it. But it will have an impact on families. So I guess it's a general question about, is there any consideration towards the impact on low-income families? And probably one for you, Angie. I don't know. Or James. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So there is support for low-income households. So each of the districts is our billing authority. So Devon doesn't do its own billing. We precept each of the districts, and each district across Devon has a council tax support scheme, which is widely publicised. So there's a different scheme for older people than there is for working age people, but all of our districts have schemes. We're a statutory consultee on those schemes, And I think just coming back to LGR, if and when LGR does happen, that'll be an opportunity to standardise those support schemes, because it is district by district at the moment, so it's not a universal scheme, although there is a lot of cross-working within the districts to try and get the right mix of helping vulnerable people and bearing in mind affordability, of course, all of the time. But yes, there is help and support for each council taxpayer.
Thank you, Angie. I appreciate that. And so I think well, James, go on before we.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add to that. Obviously, there is the district scheme, but obviously, excuse me, here at the County Council, we obviously also have a scheme for foster carers as well, where they can get a percentage of their council tax element to the County Council rebated. I think that's probably not shouted about enough. So, and I know some districts are thinking of doing a similar scheme, but
I think those, I did reference that a second. Yeah, I think they are, and I certainly North Devon are, and I'm pretty sure most of them. I'm looking at the leader or deputy leader.
But we've got that scheme live and in place now, so that will hopefully help some of the impact.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, and I think that's brilliant. So, members, I think it would be a good time to have a comfort break as well, and then we'll welcome Jack and his two cabinet members, Denise and Julian, to as we go into the education and inclusion part. So, yeah, what should we say? 5 minutes? 10 minutes?
11:30.
11:30. There are 9 minutes. 9 minutes. 1 minute, if that's okay. Okay, can we take our seats, please? Come on, leader. That's okay, hopefully that's given everybody an opportunity to have a comfort break and a drink. So thank you for that first session. And I don't know if I did say it at the end of that session, but thank you to the team over there, officers and Councillor Jeffries, for your openness and your honesty in your answers and keeping it succinct. Let's just see how your colleagues go in education. So they can sort of match your performance. We'll scrutinise that maybe, but there we go. Yeah. So sorry, Councillor Bell, can I ask you to end that conversation, Councillor? Thank you. I got a good dig from my right, so that's good. So obviously now we move on to the education and learning, schools funding, school transport and SEN specifics, and these relate to pages 12 to 13 and 26 to 33 in your report. And obviously again welcome our cabinet member Councillor Bickley, the leader Councillor Brazil on education, and Jack, sorry Jack, I should know you. Welcome to you all. I guess, Adrian, are you going to kick off here? Yeah. Oh, you've already done that.
And
So
don't need to do the end.
Yeah, so I'll try. Councillor Bickley, did you want to Councillor Brazil? There we are. I'll find somebody in a minute.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chair. And yeah, I think I said the overall view of our budget within children's services that we are delighted that I know it's comparative that we've managed to find more money for children's than any other service, and that's right, absolutely, all the increase I should say, and that's absolutely right and proper. I think it's fair to say, and Denise may go into this in some more detail, is that the The elephant in the room with all of this is the dedicated schools grant, DSG, where we are building up a massive deficit. The good news is that government has said that that will take that off our hands in 2028. As with all these things, the devil will be in the detail. We do not know how they intend to do that. They may make us borrow for it, or they may just take it, which would be great. But it is it's just hanging there, and I think if in the same way that government has allowed us to put that off balance sheet, I think that we have to press on as if that that's not there, because quite frankly, if it was, we as a council would probably be declared bankrupt, as would many councils across the country. That's the sort of precarious position that we find ourselves in. Having said that, I mean, again, Chair, you and I were up at in North Devon, a school in North Devon, and we would love to be able to find the funding to replace and maintain the schools to the standards that they should be, but we just do not have the funding available. But you can rest assured that we will be going up to see the minister, albeit a children's minister, not the Treasury, in a couple of weeks' time, and we will be making the case that my own personal belief is that if what's wrong with this country is we don't invest enough in our young children and education, and if we did that, it would make a massive difference in the medium to longer term, and that's the trouble. It's medium to longer term. So we will be making that case there to try and get more funding and particular capital funding for some of our schools. I mean, the school we were at, I mean, it's very inspiring to go into these schools, and what they have to deal with and how they manage to make ends meet, and in cramped and off. I mean, the boiler had broken down. I did accuse them of staging that, but yeah, I mean, I think we will all experience as members from our own local schools the issues that they have and the fantastic job that they do. So yeah, that's a rather overview of it, but I look forward to hearing what members of Scrutiny have to say, and if there are some changes, tweaks that we can make, we'll find out. Thank you.
Councillor Bexley.
Thank you. Just to add to that, then, so I'm grateful for all the work that's been put into this budget, obviously, by the officers and the Cabinet Member for Finance and Public Value. They've worked incredibly hard to produce something which is going to take us forward now. In Send, obviously a demand-led area by nature, we are moving towards a reliable forecasting model for the first time. There's been a huge amount of work done in the transformation programme. So things like the EHCP banding review with People 2 is going to make a massive difference to ensuring that we have the right budget for the right children. The sufficiency strategy, getting the right children in the right schools, that's going to make another massive difference, as with the commissioning framework, new software systems, early interventions. We were talking about that earlier, but that is across the piece. That's everything, all the way through Send and education, just making sure that in line with what the government is saying, making sure that EHCPs are not the only plan for improving education. We should have small plans early on in children's lives which make differences at that point. Therefore, the enormous problems don't arise, the enormously financially burdensome problems that become something that should never have arisen in the first place. Obviously, we all mourn the Sure Start centres, but I think getting back to family hubs, working locally with communities is going to make a huge difference to families. Closer alliance with our education partners and health partners through locality working, through the inclusion and learning teams, will make a massive difference. Hearing our health partners talk about speech and language, waiting lists coming down, neurodiversity, programs assisting at all points during a child's journey through the assessment and support that they need. All the threads. When I started taking on this cabinet role, I thought it was just pulling, the tanker lorry around, but actually it's lots and lots of threads that need to line up, that need to make that big rope that we pull. So I feel like we're really on the cusp now of making some changes really feelable by families. So and that will have budgetary implications as well as we get a tighter grip on things. So we've got much more confidence in our financial modelling now. We do need massive clarity coming forward and fairness from government. Councillor Jeffries and myself went to London on Monday to join with the F40 group to demand fairer funding. It's just not fair that our schools are so poorly off and our children are suffering because of it. Adding to what you were saying, I went to visit Ellen Tinkham Special School last week, and you know, it is incredible that we're basing our future on maintained special schools for children, and the funding just isn't there to improve them to the standard that they need to be at. So yeah, we need to keep pushing for that. And I was really grateful to our MP, our local MP, Richard Ford, who is going to organise us talking to all of our MPs regularly to make sure that we can have that Team Devon approach with everybody. And I think that we're going in the right direction for what ministers want now. And we just need them to come out and say what they're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bickerley, and thank you, Councillor Brazil. Yeah, really interesting. Like you say, I mean, it was interesting. It was a school in my patch that, you know, and I thank Julian and Simon Niles for coming up and looking at it. But, you know, it is, you know, the governments of both colours, I guess, you know, since around 2008, have just failed to invest in schools and you know, some of the, you know, I think Insto, you know, the officer suggested actually this is fairly normal, which is quite sad. And I think the big thing that came out of it was the fact that, you know, they're desperate to be more inclusive, desperate to welcome in children with special needs. They literally have no breakout space. They don't even have space for teachers to have a proper break away from it all, you know. So I think, you know, like you say, with the MPs, I know the MP in North Devon, he met with the minister and raised this on Monday. So hopefully that means that when Julian gets hold of him, he'll be already aware and he'll wish that Julian never turned up probably. But the, you know, we do know that you're fighting the corner, and like I say, we've just got to keep beating that drum, haven't we? That you know, we are so desperately underfunded in the first place in Devon. So, you know, when schools are having to dig in so deeply into their school budget just to keep the water from coming in through the roof, it has a real impact. So we, you know, obviously wish you well with that. I think we'll go. Jack, did you want to add anything before I go straight into questions?
I can, Chair, if it would be helpful, just to give that context for the budget actually in our service. So the budget enables us as a service to accelerate the improvements set out in the SEND transformation plan. And I know we've got the opportunity this afternoon to explore part of that around building inclusive learning communities. What that plan is, in essence, what it is about consistent practice, improving that, strengthened partnership working, which we referenced before in the social care element. It's exactly the same principles. And visible improvements for families. Denise quite rightly drew attention to families aren't fully feeling the improvements that we've started to make, and we're very, very aware of that as a service. And this budget enables us to continue that work and improve it, but accelerate it as well, going back to the elements of performance that the Chief Executive mentioned before. Inclusive learning communities is us enabling partners to improve communities and ensure that every child has the chance to be educated in their own community. And what that does in reference to the budget is it starts to improve things. So we welcome that as a service, and we're looking forward to it. We've redesigned our service because we're very aware that our service wasn't meeting the needs either of our partners, schools, etc., or children and families effectively. And that redesigned service is ready to go, and it really needs to accelerate its impact on the system, again, in line with our partners. Inclusive practice, what we mean by that is what I said before, including every child in their own community has to be the vision. What that does is it strengthens our communities, and our service is ready now to absolutely play its part in ensuring that happens. That's going to be very, very difficult and challenging work, but it's vitally important. What we have to do, and we have to recognise at this point, is just that the experience for our families, for our schools, for our partners, for yourselves as elected members doesn't at the moment recognise that optimism that I've just talked about and articulated. I'm very aware of that. This is the time where we have to make a difference. So we're looking forward to that, and I welcome questions both later and during this session on how we're going to do that.
Thank you, Jack. I think, brilliant. As with Becky earlier and yourself, your enthusiasm and commitment comes through, and obviously the chief executive wants. I need to look around to tell you how wonderful you are, but there you are. You still be hand up. Go on.
I think in all of these meetings we always need to remember what our families and our young people are saying to us, and we've got Damien Jones here today because the very first thing is our young people being able to get to that place of education or learning, and it's important on page 28 that we note continued significant transformation required in terms of that transport arrangements for our young people. The leader and myself recently attended a meeting with many school leaders across Devon, and actually that bit of transport and NEAT, there are gaps here in terms of we've got to see education and inclusion as a lifelong journey on to employability and a final destination. And there are certainly, when we look at our NEAT figures and we look at transport across Devon, and when we look at educated at home, there is more work to be done there. There are so many young people not, and I would say that when we look at those and join the dots, yes, educated at home, or some of the NEAT outcomes might be linked to choice or health issues or so on. However, we cannot not say that when you look at some of the information on that, and we have been looking at it in terms of different departments of the council, transport is a real challenge and barrier, and we've heard that from our young people. So I think there's something in this budget where, looking ahead, we maybe need to have a greater line of sight on NEAT as a specific connection between educated at home, children's social care, SEND. It's a very complex area, but in terms of that onto employment, and when you look at the statistics around our young people and that gap and that destination and aspiration, transport is something they keep talking to us about. And even when I think of North Devon and looking at some of the detail there, and having been in the sixth form college in Ilfracombe, and some amazing work taking place in that school in SEND and their journey of improvements, which is important to note. It was interesting, we just look at the challenge between Ilfracombe, Bideford and Barnstable in this area. And so we've got a map of that, but I think I have to say that this is something we need to do more work in. And I just wanted to make sure that we don't miss that page, because it's such an enabler for young people. So just wanted to point that out. I think it's really important. And also finally, just to say that the transformation in social care that we've heard in the first part of this meeting, we still, the transformation and inclusion in education and learning, we are not quite in the same position we would want to be in terms of having the internal capability and capacity across the whole council to do this at the pace that is required for our young people. So we welcome any feedback and support in that matter. And also the complexity has been outlined by the leader. There are a lot of levers that are not in our control.
Thank you, Donna. Don't worry, transport was very much on my radar, but there's at least 3 members of the school transport Fields Committee, so it's definitely on my radar. I've got 3 speakers so far, so I'm not going to hog it and go first. Councillor Hookway, then I've got Councillor Wilson, I've got Councillor Julian, and I've got somebody that Louise is just writing down, Councillor Richardson, and Councillor Bell. Like I say, we'll give each other 1 question each, and please, like I say, slipped up a couple of times in the first half. Please do come back with a supplementary and probe your question. I'll make sure you get that opportunity. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm very interested to hear what's been said recently since we returned from the break. I could talk all day about some of the things that have been said here, but I won't. I'll be very concise. In terms of making ends meet, I was in secondary main school education back in the 1980s when things were quite well funded. I am opposed entirely to making ends meet. We need to actually do something about that. I'm also opposed to busing children to school, and I'll keep that, just leave that one there. However, my question is on the Inclusion and Learning Fund on page 30. I'd like some clarification, please. I'm not clear about this. So under the school spot, the first one there, we've got academy grants of some 27 to 28 million pounds being allocated. And to nursery schools, there is nothing being allocated at all. Now, my understanding, perhaps somewhat naively, is that academies were funded from central government. So I would be very grateful if someone could explain to me, A, why we are giving 28 million pounds to academies over this year and why we are not giving anything to nursery schools, because I think providing funding for nursery schools would be a very sound investment, which would alleviate some of the issues, some of the social issues that we are having to deal with today. Thank you, Chair.
I think there is going to be a good explanation to that. I might not agree with it, but I'm pretty sure it's how the funding comes down from government. But
yeah, so first of all, the academy grants is an element of the overall DSG that we recognise, the Dedicated Schools grant, that we get in as an authority, and then it has to be passed out from our Part 6. It's more around things like the pupil premiums element, other elements that are outside of the main schools block that we have. The element we're talking about nursery schools, we don't have nursery schools in Devon anymore. They've moved into, they are part of the starts within the primary schools and the academy setup. So we don't actually recognise as a nursery school as such within the authorities build. They are providers outside that we will have, or they are, like I say, early years settings within the schools themselves at the moment. So that's why we don't have anything on that line itself.
Chair, I just have to have a very quick supplementary question, please, to the officer. So thank you for your explanation that you're passing on government money to the academies. Are you charging the academies for handling this money?
No, it's straight through, passport through. That's part of the way that we have to do it. It comes in centrally and then it just gets dispersed out to the relevant parties as the calculations are advised to us by.
Chair, if I may I ask the committee to consider actually that we do charge the academies for handling this money? Because I know in the past, when government money has come down to maintain schools, that money has been top sliced to pay for the administration. So I think that is something that we ought to consider as a long-term view. Thank you, Chair.
we will note that. Nobody's looking like they want to come back. I can see the leader. You've probably been, yeah. I think the leader and myself have got a similar view of academies in general. But yeah, I think we are probably got our hands tied here. But
no, Chair, I was just musing about some of the heads of academy trusts, how that would go down with them. Not that that would put us off, should put us off, but I think it's an interesting. I think just should say, Councillor Hookway, that one of the we do take a it was part of the safety valve actually, but we do take a small percentage of the funding that goes to academies. It's not a massive amount, but it's important for us. They complain about it, but as I always say, you know, all they need to do is sack one of their executives, and then that would easily pay for it. Anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway and Adrian, for the response. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question based on a line on page 26, which is under the virtual school safeguarding and vulnerable groups. I can see that overall there's a reduction or savings in the safeguarding and attendance line and the virtual school. So I just wanted to know a bit more about that saving, and particularly as it involves safeguarding. What does this mean for the young people? And does this mean that the high standards of safeguarding will still be upheld? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. The redesign of our service, firstly, is that there's an absolute focus on the safeguarding and support to vulnerable children. So the whole principle of the redesign is improving that. With regards to how this appears in the budget line, it's more a reflection of how we've organised our service, and so I recognise that it doesn't fully reflect that actually we want to improve our education safeguarding, we want to improve the service to vulnerable young people. And so I think that answers the question, but I'm willing to come back with more clarity on that.
Thank you. I'd welcome that. Thank you.
Councillor Julian.
Thank you, Chair. I think I just want to take up certainly transport and where we are in North Devon. You know, about shipping, having coaches coming. We've got the academy in Bucks Cross, and that seems to be declining of students there. They don't have the facilities like sports facilities, other facilities to keep the children engaged. And then the bus comes along and then ships them back out and takes them back to Bideford. It seems that we have such a disjointed system in North Devon, where things seems to be moving around and costing so much money. And I went to Tiverton about the youth centre there, about the youngsters there, and the biggest problem where they want to do more education. You know, you're talking about education, and they said they don't bother doing anything because they can't get anywhere. And this is the biggest problem we've got in North Devon, is trying to get children into education and getting their lives on track so they can do other things. And we got Petrostow, of course, they have a job to get to there, and also they were on about better links. You know, even though we're talking about transport here and how it's increasing, but the children need to be able to get about, and they just can't get about in North Devon. And it's sad that you know, we'll have to increase, or some of the schools. I mean, why is it declining? That's the other thing. A brand new school there, and yet the pupils, there's not enough pupils there. So what are they going to do with that school? And you know, it is a concern. I'm concerned about it all, with the education, with the transport. I am concerned about the youth. I'm about the young people, because they're our future, aren't they? So that's what I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, I don't think I mean, it is a problem in North Devon, and quite rightly, as North Devonian councillors we'll talk about. I think it is an issue county-wide, and I think what you're saying is, you know, children, a lot of our disadvantaged children, you know, haven't got the parents, or the parents are busy working. You know, they haven't got the ability to attend after school, whatever the after school clubs or whatever they are, because the bus or the transport will leave dead on the end of school time. So in a way, those disadvantaged, or those with, you know, their family circumstances, so it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because, you know, but I don't know if anybody can. Jack's getting ready, or Adrian.
So in terms of where we can allocate young people to local bus services or the train, then that gives them the flexibility to be able to travel at other times. The problem is when you get into the deep rural areas, the buses are once a week. And obviously that doesn't work with that sort of flexible of movements, but it's something that through our bus service improvement plan, which is obviously separate from the school transport, we link the two together to get the maximum out of the local bus network, but it's not possible in all the areas with the funding that we've got.
Yeah, Donna will have
that-
knowledge of this
Right,
from the
because I
Highlands.
think that there's a few things here. There is sufficiency. So what schools want to do in their area, that's a discussion, as I say, that we've started with looking at our head of economy, because it's linked to that employment route and that post-16, the discussions we attended of, you know, where provisions across Devon, how can we increase sufficiency in the local area, because there is a concern, particularly in that 16 to 18 years, the level of sufficiency that was previously in Devon is no longer there. So I know that the cabinet leads are on to this, but I think there's a specific piece of work in terms of just what Damien's described, to say what could be, what could happen in those key areas where you've got, you know, where our young children are, we know where that piece where sometimes children educated at home then want to come back into the system as they're going into adulthood and onto employment. So we've got a bit of work taking place at the moment to specifically join those dots, and I think it's something for the committee to consider where that work goes or what that looks like. But it's, Damien, I don't want you, if you want to say anything more about that work, because we do recognise it is an issue and it is impacting on young people's futures.
Yeah, so we've looked at the very long list of needs that was supplied to us, and we were only providing transport for one of those young people. Obviously, through the education policies that we've got at the moment, they may be accessing transport outside of DCC control, but it's obvious that we're not providing transport for a significant number of those young people, and that's something that we're looking at. What could an offer be to help them?
I think it's a key one for Denise and Richard. I mean, we're talking about the F40, weren't they, earlier? And I mean, we've got this ridiculous situation where government tell us we have to keep people in education, training, you know, blah, 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 but then we haven't got a statutory duty to provide the transport. So, you know, it's an impossible, you know, like I say, Councillor Brazil's already outlined our overspend, if you like, in that, you know, trying to meet the demand that we have a statutory duty to meet, but nowhere near enough money to meet that need. And I think, you know, for me, I think, like you say, not for me to tell Councillor Bickley, but I think it's something that needs to be raised through that F40. It's all very well giving us all these statutory duties, but we blooming well need the finance to come with it, because, you know, young people are being left behind, aren't they? It is a postcode lottery. If you happen to have got a bus that runs by the end of the road, great. If you live in it, I understand what Damien said about, but it's not even them real rural areas. I mean, places like Torrington, there's no way of getting out of Torrington on a Sunday. And, you know, my wards are fine. Thank you very much. There's a bus every 15 minutes and they want to build thousands of houses to meet it. But there are massive swathes of Devon where there are no transport, and it's difficult. Councillor June, you wanted to come back.
Just wanted to come back. I understand. I mean, it is a big strain on, you know, on the budget. I do understand that, and there's no magic wand for this. But we you know, a bit of it is growing at an alarming pace, a bit like Barnstable, but it is growing ever so fast. And it just seems that you know, it's going to be very difficult for the young people of that part of Devon. It is trying to catch up, trying to get a job afterwards, you know, trying to get better education. It really is. I think, you know, I hope the cabinet takes note that, you know, North Devon is a big need. I know Devon's big, and fortunately, if you live in the city, you're laughing. But if you're out in the sticks and, you know, you've got these schools that are so far apart, you just need to, you know, take on board, you know, what we can do for them. I'm just concerned about the young, you know, the new generation that we've got to look after. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I just jokingly said to Louise, but I think that in a joke sometimes you think, couldn't it be cheaper for us to buy them all a scooter, wouldn't it? You know, one of those little zip things, because it, you know, when you look at, and I think, you know, Councillor Richardson certainly sits on the chip school, you know, when you look at the cost of some of our individual, you know, travel things, it's eye-watering, and it's so I think I would like to keep going on transport, if that's all right, and that would mean that I've gone off list. Yeah, go on, councillor Bickley. So
Thank
I want to
you.
keep on transport is what I'm saying, and then we'll move off that.
This is transport, raised by the Devon Youth Council. One of their major problems is transport. So we have got a subcommittee that's meeting to try and talk around that area. But obviously it's massively complex. So we're trying to come up with solutions. But again, it's going to take time. And I think it speaks massively to perhaps before our administration, a lack of joined up long-term thinking about policies like this that that I think we're starting to pick up now. So we are starting to talk about a 16+ strategy to cover NEET, but all 16+ children, you know, young people, to make sure that there are equal opportunities and try and you know, narrow those gaps across the whole of Devon. So it is a massive problem, but it is something that I think we're starting to turn our attention to now rapidly. Strategies themselves don't necessarily, you know, complete the job. We have to follow it through with cross-council working and make sure that there's governance to make sure that works properly and that things are felt in the future. But we have to start now, and it's not going to be an overnight fix.
Absolutely not. Thank you. I've got Councillor Wilson that wants to talk about transport. Councillor Richardson will add massive value on this, probably more than so. So I'll do that. Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. My main question is that, well, in Ilfracombe recently we had a contractor for school buses go out of business at very short notice. So we know that the market of providers for school transport is very fragile. What risk does this place on the routes that we have, and how can this be mitigated? Thank you.
The coach market is under significant pressure. So Filers Travel, who'd worked for us for 56 years, went out of business. Downs Coaches the year before from Tavistock, Mary Taylor, they worked for us for 100 years, and we're not getting those new suppliers coming through. At a national level, we're working with colleagues from other councils looking at how we can encourage people into the sector, but those traditional coach firms are literally dying out and we're not getting replacements coming through. One of the options that some councils are considering is whether that they actually set up their own company to provide that service themselves, and there are provisions in the new Bus Services Act to look at that as an option. So that's something that we have started to look at, but that's obviously a longer term position that needs some capital investment. But it is getting increasingly difficult in a lot of areas. We've got coach operators travelling further afield to get to do the contracts for us. It's also links back with what we were talking about before, is if we can get more young people on public transport as well, then we've got less need for the dedicated coaches. There's also something called PSVAR, which is Public Sector Accessibility Vehicle Regulations. School transport is currently exempt from that, and we're working with the DFT, because if that exemption doesn't continue, then we can see a lot of other coach operators as well that may be thinking about it's time to call it a day.
Thanks, Richardson.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Councillor Wilson, who raised a question which is going to be on the similar lines of mine. I think, first of all, I just wanted to really thank the school transport team for the savings they've identified. I mean, I think, you know, the whole of children's services, we have to thank the savings that have been made for this budget, because obviously the impact on the rest of children's services is going to be incredible. Now, it's amazing to see the route optimization software and other efficiencies made, but obviously we can't do this every year, because there will be a point where we meet a higher level of efficiency and it's harder to improve. I think Councillor Wilson's point on coach companies, you know, we all know the pressure on local providers. We have competition with things like the railway whenever there's engineering works as well, and quite often rail providers will be able to pay more, and therefore these coach companies will choose the contract where they earn more. So I was basically going to ask what has been put in place to look at bringing in-house coach services, which you've you've touched on. I think our neighbours in Somerset have began that process a few years ago, and they have a fleet of coaches available. And I'd just like to stress the importance of doing this, as Donna raised and others, and Councillor Bickley, that our young people are desperate for opportunities to get around Devon. And you know, being able to have a service where we're able to cross departments in children's services and transport to ensure that the people of Devon can move around, particularly young people, is super important. So I really hope this work continues over the next few years. And I really do think, you know, as Councillor Biederman and Councillor Bell, who also sit on the School Transport Bills Committee, know the cost of some of these taxi contracts is unbelievable. And I do think this, if we can find the capital investment to begin this process, then we should reap the benefits. Thank you.
There's a couple of things there. So we have an annual savings target because networks change over time, and we've met those savings targets year on year, which has been about around £500,000 a year. The school transport budget is a lot more stable than it was a couple of years ago. On a £51 million budget at month 8, we were 50,000 away from that, which is a great achievement by the team. In terms of the route optimization, we're currently operating with a 25-year-old in-house computer system, and it's been great with the members of the cabinet are really supporting us on introducing more modern ways of working, and we're going to be introducing the route optimization. And again, talking to other local authorities, they have done something similar and made similar amounts of savings. So we are currently going through a procurement process through the government's G-Cloud network, and that we're optimistic that the system will be in place for the 1st of April. But yes, when you initially do that work, you get a higher level of saving, and then it does drop off. But we will reflect that as we're setting budgets going forward into future years. Taxi costs are significant. I think there's sometimes there's a lot of comparison between what you would pay on a rank versus what it costs to get a taxi to get a child to school. We saturate the market at school times, and often members of the public can't get a taxi. There was an example last year when the minister came to open Marsh Barton Station. He turned up at St David's and there was no taxis because we were using them all to get the children to school. So it does have a significant impact. And the idea from the route optimization is to reduce and minimize the amount of taxis that we provide. I think I covered everything there for you. Yeah.
Councillor Bickley.
Just a tiny point, just to say that the sufficiency strategy, where we're getting the right children in the right schools, in the right areas, and the fact that we'll have send hubs, resource hubs, a lot more things going on in localities. I do think that that's going to have a massive knock-on effect in years to come, getting the children in the right place, not being bussed across the whole of the county to get to places.
And because of work I've been involved in SEN, transport is now an integrated part of the decision. So when a placement is made for a young person, transport costs are considered at the start of that process, whereas before the placement was decided and then they'd come to the transport team and say, right, you've now got to provide that. So it's a much more integrated the way transport is planned. And I think that's why the SEN transport costs have stabilised.
Yeah, no, and I think what you two have just said, I think is crucial. If every school is inclusive and we can build that, then it does reduce. I just want to, this is not, I'm just checking that April the 1st is April the 1st, 2026 for implementation and not.
Yeah, what we've decided to do, obviously the transport system we use is massive. We can't get the whole thing replaced by the 1st of April, but we're replacing we're introducing route optimization at that point. We're also modernising our fleet management system as well, because we run a fleet of about 140 of our own passenger vehicles, and with a new IT system for that, we think we can get better use out of that, which will help get more sustainable school transport as well to maximise our own fleet. And that's sort of the minibuses and the people carriers rather than the larger vehicles.
I mean, I know we need to move off transport because we've got plenty of other in here, but I think, you know, support what Councillor Richardson said. I think, you know, that in-house, looking at how we can grow in-house is vital, because I think, like you say, it has a knock-on effect. Trying to get a normal member of the public trying to get to work and 8:30 in the morning, it is impossible. So I think that it's twofold. It's expensive, but also, you know, a lot of these taxis are needed in the community, wider community. So I think it really is important we look at an enhancing the in-house and growing it. But I sort of often think of the hospital transport system, and you think, well, you know, I know there's a lot of safeguarding issues, but we have to have DBS checks on our taxi drivers and everything. And a couple of times we've been sat there and thinking, all we can pay somebody is 45p a mile to, if some good willing citizens willing to do it. And I just think there's a massive opportunity there where there would be people that live on the same street or in the same village that actually would be quite happy to, probably, who's known to the child, you know, with the right safeguards in place. I think, you know, I just think there's an opportunity there, and whether that's something that we can investigate, because, you know, I think there's a lot of people in our communities that would like to help, but at the moment and it might well be national legislation, what it is. I just think it'd be useful to look at how our communities, you know, I can imagine there's certainly in my area, there's a lot of sort of semi-old people that would love to, you know, build a relationship with a child in their street, get them to school, get them back, get them from their club, you know, because they're a lot more flexible than the taxi that has to turn up at 3:30 when school finishes to move forward. So yeah, I just wonder if that's something we can add to our work program to investigate if there's any legs in that sort of thing. I've got Councillor Hookway, I think they wanted to come back specifically on that, and then Councillor Connor. Councillor Bell, I've had your name on my list for a long time, but I don't think it's transport, is it? It is. Well, then let's go to back Councillor Bell. And can we take those three on the trot? So Councillor Bell, Councillor Hookway, Councillor Connor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richardson asked most of the question I wanted to ask, but Mr. Jones, the government is talking a lot, and has been for some time really, about expanding out breakfast clubs in schooling. Does that not, of course, as Councillor Biedermann just said, you know, there's a very tight timeline to get children to school for 8:45, but of course the provision of hopefully free breakfast clubs would provide a lot more flexibility in the time that children get to school, and potentially you've got vehicles able to make 2 journeys rather than 1, as long as we could have something joined up. Is there any legs in exploring that sort of option?
If we provided transport for a breakfast club and at school times, that would double our cost, because you still have to provide the transport. If all children are going in at the same time, we only have to run 1 vehicle. If they're going in at multiple times, then it increases our costs. We've seen that through where children are excluded and then we provide bespoke transport packages for them. That's a significantly higher cost because you get lots of individual journeys. So the way you get an efficient transport network is bulk movements at particular times. As soon as you split that out, then the cost will increase. And I think part of the problem is, and part of the work we do as officers nationally, is these policies are all thought about in an urban setting. They're not thought about in a rural setting and how you actually move people around. And it is significantly more cost if you split the loads out, sadly.
I want to be really quick here. Can I just take Councillor Connor's question and Councillor Hookway together, and then, because I'm worried that we haven't even got the children to school yet, and there's plenty of other stuff that we need to get through. So. Councillor Hookway.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm very grateful for the contributions of officers and also of other members. But the situation is in its own way just as bad in East Devon. In Exmouth, we have one of the largest secondary schools in Europe. That sucks in students from a very wide area. So the question, educated within their own community, how big is the community that Exmouth serves? And I think we are here now victim of decisions that were made decades ago that large schools were a good thing. whereas we know for a fact that community schools are much better, and we really do need to, I think about the vision that we want, because if we don't, we will not break the logjam of children being bused for a long period of time. In my area, it is not unusual for children to spend 2 hours a day being bused from Exmouth across to Collerton and back again. And we have this absurd situation where children can't walk to school, they have to use bus, or they are driven by their parents. And we really do need to think strategically about how we're going to deal with this, because let's face it, financially and educationally, it's unsustainable. Thank you, Chair.
I'm not sure there was a question there, but I think the thing is, and I think planning's the other side of it, isn't it? I mean, certainly all the growth in my ward it is well outside the school, you know, the distance that will, so every house that's been built means a child is going to have to foot the bill to take the child to school. And, you know, like I say, planning's part of it. But I think it's something that we're going to have to look at in our work programme to really delve into deeply. But I think that's good. Can we, I'm just going to move it on. I'll kick off in that because I don't think I've got any hands. But how much of the children's services budget is allocated to SEND support? And how has this changed year on year? And I'll sort of, just to speed things up, can you provide the latest data on SEND independent placement numbers and costs, and explain what is driving increases and what the expected trajectory is as we move into 26, 27? So I did share that one in advance, so hopefully, yeah, there he is, ready.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, SEND support, really it's the high needs block budget as a whole is probably, it's in amongst there. For the current budget plan, we are looking at a £210 million budget, which is around 22% of the overall budget allocation we've got across this year. Compared to the last few years, that's slightly higher by about 1% increase from the previous years. An increase of 1% from the previous year's position on that for the last couple of years. With regards to the independent specialist placements, we have £61 million this year planned. That's after recognising the actions that we've got within Safety Valve as well for that aspect. That's around 1,300 children going through placements across there. Going forward, obviously, as was been highlighted, the recognition is to look at bringing that closer to home, trying to bring that more inclusive environment within our schools and special school settings, which will reduce that impact going forward, and looking at that across the transitions. Trajectory wise, it is currently seeing a continuation from where we are for this year going forward at the moment, in that growth in that area.
I'm looking at Jack, so I'm thinking, you know, obviously how ready are our schools to, you know, we've sort of already, myself and Councillor Brazil have talked about what Insto yesterday, where they'd absolutely love to have children in that is constrained site. Nothing they can do to increase capacity.
So, Chair, thank you. It's an extremely challenging situation for the education system in Devon, including our schools and our partners. Our role as DCC is to support the direction of travel that is likely to come with upcoming legislation. And what I mean by that is supporting our schools to look at the art of the possible about what is possible with the funding and the resources that they have, that we have, to work together to include. It's really important to recognise here that our independent, the number of young people in our independent schools and the fact that we're using them, that we will be changing that over the time. So specific actions, which I think was part of the question, is around, we have a high needs panel ensuring that everything has been considered before that. And so we're starting to see changes in practice, some changes, but it's preparing the ground and some green shoots rather than overall in performance. This is an extremely complex context, but we have to continue in line with what we think is going to be in upcoming reforms, which will encourage more mainstream inclusion. We have to just continue to ensure back to the principle of how can we include children in the community. And it's, I think, a key part, and it will become more evident this afternoon in our building inclusive learning communities. What we've done in our redesign of our service is we're getting alongside schools in the form of our inclusion partners to be looking earlier at the children that we know where needs, it would have been possible to meet their needs in their community if we'd have been more effective as a partnership earlier. And so inclusion partners right now are working alongside schools and saying, tell us about your school, tell us about your children in here. How can we work together, and bringing in partners to meet those needs earlier? So this is difficult. This is difficult work. It's an absolute priority within the service to ensure more children needs are met in the community, and therefore reducing our reliance on independent school placements, and that's across the whole continuum.
Yeah, I mean, I think the context of the budget is obviously if the schools aren't ready for this, will have an impact on the budget, and you know that I guess is the concern, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I've looked at Director of Finance, but that lack of deadlines not being met, we're still in a position now, and I would ask the Director of Finance to clarify it, that we, whether it's policy papers or linked to this year's settlement, we just don't have clarity in terms of the national system and policy change. So in terms of back to the budget and all things send, in my view, it presents us still with the greatest risk to the council financially, but equally so for our most vulnerable children out there in the system and our families who actually are working really hard with us and in partnership. Everybody's been waiting for this clarity for quite some time now, but I would ask the Director of Finance to give us an update on even the budget communication from government on this matter.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to come in. So good news is that central government has now recognised that the SEND financial challenges are not the responsibility of local government. So central government has recognised that it will take over responsibility for the funding and any deficits. It will transfer to central government. This was announced as part of the autumn statement from the Chancellor. So from the 1st of April 2028, we're expecting full responsibility to move to central government. What we're waiting for, though, is the plan on what will happen between now and the 1st of April 2028. So there are indications that there will be some financial support for local authorities. We don't know if that means part grant, part borrowing. It was meant to be announced last summer. It was then moved to the autumn. Autumn budget came and we were told it would form part of the provisional local government settlement just before Christmas. It didn't arrive as part of that process. We're now being told it will be early 2026. We're in early 2026 now. I've still not heard anything and I don't have a date. The final settlement from government is the beginning of February. We don't know the exact date. So the expectation is that we will hear something as part of that process, but that again is not certain. So we're waiting for information on what will happen with the cumulative deficit that we're holding. And we're waiting to hear what the government's white paper will say about what the government plans are to make the system more inclusive, to stop these deficits from arising again in the future. Because if the government clear it once and they don't fix the underlying processes and the underlying system, of course, they're just going to grow again and quite quickly. So the budget that's before you today has spend in excess of the grant funding of £73 million for next year. What the government hasn't done yet is even announce the level of high needs block funding for next year. So we're at the moment working on no increase to high needs block funding, which is where the 73 comes. So any increase in that grant, if it's announced as part of the final settlement, will decrease that overspending. But we're, like every local authority, waiting for the government policy announcements, not only the white paper, but critically what's going to happen about the cumulative deficit that we're holding in an unusable reserve at the moment as per government requirements. So we're very much in limbo at the moment, Chair.
Well, you started by praising the government. It was just all the detail afterwards was the problem. Yeah, and I think, you know, in all seriousness, the I guess should this then be added to our budget risk register for 26-27, because it clearly still is a risk. Yeah, I think that you're nodding. I'm sort of suggesting, yeah, I think that's important, because I think it probably also gives power to the elbow when you're off to F40 and different things that, you know, it is a real risk. I guess just moving slightly, same subject, but I sort of asked about what's driving the demand, and if I'm right, we've got 10,000 children with EHCPs. Was that a figure that I heard the other day? Something like that. And obviously we all hear of the parents that are in the waiting list, and obviously we've got that early help strategy, and that's brilliant. But we've still got those people. And of course, I guess the risk is we've got the wrong type of people in the waiting list, and it's trying to see the wood for the trees and who we need to be prioritising to get them that help. How do we get through that problem?
I'll have a go. So it's chicken and egg, this, isn't it? We have to get in early in order to ensure that those children that can be helped early do not then end up in the EHCP queue looking for more targeted help further on. What we need to work on is the ordinarily available inclusive provision within schools. So that's our locality teams working with the schools to make sure that they're doing everything for the children in their care to ensure that they are coping, so it doesn't escalate. So that's one strand of it. We're always going to need some independent schools, if you think about the blind schools, things like that. So what we have done is the commissioning framework. So we know exactly how much they're going to cost. And then we look to our high needs panel to make sure that the right children are in those provisions. That will start to bring the costs much more in line with what we're expecting them to be. We'll always have tribunals, which unfortunately override everything. They can place a child in a school which is already massively oversubscribed and the cost isn't looked at. Whereas, of course, we have to make decisions based on public value as well as the needs of the child. We're concentrating on outcomes for the children. That is always going to be the most important thing, but we also have a duty to make sure that all children within Devon are catered for. So that's a very difficult tightrope that all councils are walking. I asked that at an LGR event, it feels like when you go to tribunal, it's like people are looking at two different pieces of legislation. We're looking at a code of conduct. The tribunal will look at the law and just go with parent choice. So that makes it very hard for us to budget. But I do think we're getting far more on track with these decisions being made in a really clear way.
And building on that, because what a great, exactly that. But building on that, Chair, is, and I think it's important to recognise right at the root of this is improving the relationships between the different partners that are involved in making sure a child's needs are met. And I think it's important that we recognise in here that relationships between different partners, so for example, between schools and the local authority, between academy trusts, schools, the local authority, between survey.
Can we say Devon County Council? Let's not, let's be honest, it is.
But yes, we can, and it's just important to recognise the role of the partnership in here, and our work is based in relational practice, and what we mean by that on the ground, and this is what I was referencing before, is we recognise that we needed to get in alongside schools and partners earlier, not just around children's needs, but it actually supporting settings in their place in their community and developing local solutions, which is why we've reorganized our service into the same localities as our social care partners. And we've got green shoots again of work where we're working alongside meeting needs earlier. This is about changing the whole culture of Devon's education system and playing our part in it.
No, I absolutely, because she was that good, she wants to come back. Look, she's got full of confidence now. Go on.
I'm sorry, I just forgot one thing that I wanted to say, and along with Councillor Hookway, I've been quite critical of academies, but to give them their dues at the moment, we're working with the Special Partnership Trust to develop special hubs, around the country, and I think they've picked 4 mats, is that right? And so those mats are now stepping up into that space. I think they're feeling supported, they're feeling part of the team, part of the bigger picture. So, and I think they're sort of slightly thinking, well, they're all competitive as well, so they all want to be the best, the fastest. So let's let them do that. So I do think that direction of travel is definitely pushing them to think about their inclusive practices. So hopefully that continues.
Yeah, I think, and I sort of meant, like I say, we say local authority, and I think we're used to all that language, but the public, and I think we have to have that honesty, don't we, that actually we are, we failed in the past. There's massive improvement been made, but we've got a long way to go. And I think the other side of it is obviously what's happening, because obviously we are, and schools are keen all of a sudden, aren't they? Because there's an Ofsted thing that they've got to be inclusive. So suddenly they are engaged and pricked up. So we've had Angie praising the government, me praising Ofsted. What next? But there we are. But yeah, I think there is a long way to go, though. So a lot of parents would have been refused entry into a school, and then suddenly it comes around full loop, and you're getting an opportunity to go to that school. And of course, they're saying they didn't want him 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ago. So I think that, how do we communicate out to parents that actually they can expect a different response from the school going forward?
I think it's important to reference in here and for you, and something to watch the development of. Our joint strategic needs assessment will reduce escalation to EHCPs and therefore on the pathway. And this piece of work that's being completed will enable the council and its services and health to wrap around schools, meeting the needs earlier. So there's multiple components happening at the same time to answer really the challenge that you gave, Chair, around how are we going to stop the stream, if you like, for want of a much better word, around children's needs. So that earlier wraparound, we've got that strategic needs assessment in place now in order to move that forwards.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any hands. I think everybody must be hungry, but I've got a couple of more. Go on, Councillor Carson. Go on.
Yeah, thank you. Would it be possible, Jack, to delve into that later? Obviously, this is a budget meeting. Is it on the agenda for this afternoon, or do we need to put
Absolutely.
it into work in progress?
This afternoon is focused on building inclusive learning communities, and we'll have more officers here, and absolutely we can go.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
I think where I'm coming from at the moment, Councillor Carson, is there still a risk to the budget that we've got for us if it doesn't work? But yeah, absolutely. Free school meals, brilliant. That, I think, that is wonderful news, isn't it? Because it brings in more funding, but obviously it will have challenges. And so what is the financial impact of increased free school meals eligibility on the budget, and how is it being funded? So I think that's back to Adrian. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'll do the numbers. That's fine. So yes, so the additional money coming into the authority or Devon County Council regarding the schools funding for free school meals is one of the factors within the calculation of the national funding formula from the dedicated schools grant. So we've seen that come through with the increased introduction of the free school meals auto enrolment that Devon has done in the last year on getting all recognition of all children that are eligible are recognised. That, as I said, is funded through the dedicated schools grant, so it is coming through from government money to us across the board.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Bell, sorry.
Thank you. Could I come in? I do have a couple of questions, so that's right, but I would like to come in on the free school meals, if that's okay. Obviously, something that's been an absolute crown jewel is the HAF, the holiday activities, as part of the free school meals. Of course, that comes into it. Are we safeguarding? Are we is that funded protected going forwards? Because it's been a real godsend.
So to understand at the moment is that the HAF will continue for the future, and that is its recognised own separate grant. It's not part of the funding that comes in through this. It will be additionally going out as in currently does.
Thank you very much.
Did you want to carry on with your other couple of questions?
I do have sorry, I made a few questions. I'll start with the depressing one, if that's okay. Two. I'm going to see if I can combine them, although this is probably impossible. So the depressing question, I'm afraid. I love every time I hear local government reorganisation mentioned, because there's a little groan. Something that is not mentioned in the report, and I think it needs to be within the risk assessment, is of course going back 6 years. COVID. It happened once. We had we have a once in a century pandemic, which we expect to happen again. The work done in the budget is fantastic, and I think some really good work. Obviously, as everyone said, making some real progress. That and really it came up when Councillor Beckley mentioned that the increase in the number of SEND cases, directly related, of course, to the fact that children were locked down and they had a horrific time. There's no. We're not ready. I feel that if our education system did get hit by another global pandemic, if there was that risk that children would have their education massively disrupted, I don't know that we are prepared for that within the budget and the massive impact that it would have on what we do. And of course, we all recognise the importance of children's education. We need to recognise that we need to be well prepared and do very, very well next time if it happens again.
Donna.
Yeah, in terms of the corporate risk register, it goes with the budget. We'll pick that up. What I can assure you is with the Director of Public Health that is an ongoing conversation, and also some of the partnership work that we are doing with health, that there are various work streams linked to that matter, but and I see that we've got a nod, but we make sure that should be covered in the overall budget. Yeah, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just come in briefly. So we have a risk in our main risk register around a repeat of a pandemic or something similar. So that is covered in the risk register. What we don't have within each individual budget is a financial budget related risk, but it is covered in the overall. So rather than having it in each individual budget, so one for children's, one for adults, one for CARES, we just have a corporate overarching, but it is picked up.
Happy?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's I noticed £600,077, I think, on the libraries budget. Fantastic, and of course, school libraries are brilliant. Councillor Cottle-Hunkin and I visited Cholmondeley Community College, where, of course, they combine their library services. We're looking at, of course, costs.
Sorry, Councillor Bell. I do apologise.
Yeah.
I'm being whispered in my ear. I think the library budget sits in the corporate infrastructure and regulatory services or budget, not children's. But are we talking about school?
School libraries, yes.
But I'm guessing school libraries would sit. So that's fine. Do apologise.
It is within the budget. I think I found it when I was. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for that confirmation. It is really. I mean, have we explored every opportunity to combine work more closely, as we see in Cholmondeley Academy, which is a fantastic piece of work where they've done it for 40 years now, bringing the community and the school libraries together. There seems to be more that could be explored in that area in order to not to cut funding any more than is absolutely necessary in either section, but in order to safeguard library services to ensure that children's libraries have, or school libraries have access to the Libraries Unlimited type of working model, and Libraries Unlimited have access to, you know, the fact that there are libraries in every community school.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Our school library service is established and is good, but we are also reviewing it, as in how effective is it as part of our the opportunities that we trade to our schools. We need to fully review that to ensure that it's fit for purpose, one, and meets the needs of children, but also that it's something that we need to run, because there are multiple models around Devon of very, very effective services that schools have set up. And so we need to make sure that we get the balance right between what we're doing as Devon County Council and how we support our partners to do what they've done, like what they have done in Cholmondeley, because actually I've been there myself. It is very, very effective how they include their community in that. So our school library service, as with all of our services, we are reviewing to make sure it's the very best that it can be.
Thank you. So I just, not quickly, but just conscious of lunch. Obviously, we now move along to our, but you know, are there any questions, members? I'm not going to ask anybody to introduce this, but obviously we've got the service statistics, grants, external organisation, staffing, data, capital programme, and the risk register at the back of your papers. Can I ask if anybody's got any questions on that? I think Councillor Wilson, you probably have. So over to you, Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
Yeah, just relating to risk, the Growing Futures programme assumes 4.7 million savings through reduced external placements. What happens if the strategic partner is not secured as scheduled? Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you. If the strategic partner's not secured as scheduled, then that would lead to a delay in the development of those homes and that provision. We don't anticipate that to be a problem at this point. We have a number of interested parties who are progressing through the different phases of procurement, so we feel really optimistic that we will be working with a strategic partner as planned, and we would be still on schedule for our first home to open at the end of the financial year.
I'll just come back.
Yeah, of course you can.
Thank you. Yes, I really hope. I'm sure it will. But I'm just thinking. But what if financially, what happens to, you know, what pressure will that put on, in the worst case scenario, on other aspects of the budget, assuming that's quite a large saving that is put against Growing Futures?
So the 4.7 million is broken down into, it's 1.2 million associated with opening gap homes. It's 1.2 million associated with open new internal children's home provision. And it's about 2.3 million, which is associated with the strategic partnership home. So that splits down that financial savings target. Most of those savings are associated with investment and cost, and a lot of those investments cost more than the savings that they're going to deliver. So the risk of slippage financially actually is not that significant. The bigger risk is around containing those costs within that budgeted envelope.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Thank you, Gemma. Any further questions? No. Brilliant. Okay, so as we draw to a close, I think you might have seen me whispering away to Louise. She's quite remarkable actually in the support she's given us before the meeting, but I've been whispering away to her as I've been thinking we ought to include that in the work programme. That ought to be a recommendation, and then she's been pointing at the screen and I've been reading what she's written and sort of changing it. So I think we have got a series of recommendations probably, and some work programme items which we'll pick up separately. So is it possible to share those on the screen? There we are. So, so this is our recommend. How many pages are there? That thing looks like it's got a long way to go, but the yeah. I mean, I'm not going to read them all, but I think if we deal with them bullet point by bullet point, and if I can sort of, if you've got any major objections to anything there, please show. If you want to add a little bit to each one. So we'll go bullet point 1, which is talking about the overall 7.7% and welcoming it. Bullet point 2. Tell me if I'm going too quick. Bullet point 3. These are all things we're welcoming. So bullet point, where did I get to? Can't count. 5, 4, 5. Yeah, no, don't worry. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 in total. The last 2 are quite short. Are we happy? And yeah. And then we move on to our impressive. We've got less. Realize that we recorded 2 concerns, which is good. So I'll let you have time to look at those, and please indicate if you're not happy. Any? So just to stop there. So Councillor Carson, you.
Thank you, Chair. The underfunding, do you think we should bring that to scrutiny at every committee meeting that we hold to see how that those costs are being managed throughout the year?
I'm not sure about every scrutiny. I mean, I think, like you say, Councillor Bickley and Councillor Jeffreys have become part of the F40 group, which is that sort of. I don't know if it's been. Does everybody understand F40? Maybe not. F40 is about the worst funded local authorities coming together and campaigning together on a fairer funding model. So the value that would add to scrutiny, because obviously they're doing that, and what the government give us is what the government give us. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on, but I'm not sure about every scrutiny meeting. And I think it is about applying pressure on government to recognise the underfunding. So difficult to, I'm trying to see where that would add value to our work programme, considering that we've got a hell of a work programme when you see what we've added to our work programme today. And I promised Louise when I became chair that we would have thick butter on our toast so that we did things well rather than thin out. But I think it is something that obviously we would welcome Councillor Jeffreys and Councillor Bickley to report back to council, but I assume they'll report back to the full council on their campaigning. So I think there will be opportunities to ask questions and understand where it's going, but probably not through our work programme. I don't like saying no, so that's why it's such a long answer.
Thank you, Chair. Although I would add that it's probably the biggest thing to take away from this budget meeting. Is that
absolutely it absolutely is, and I think unlike the government, we have to deliver a balanced budget. We can't just spend money pie in the sky. So it's I mean, I've cried about school funding ever since I became a councillor. It's a crying shame, but I think the cabinet members are on it, and they're. But, Chair, have you got?
A key part of this budget is that shift in children's social care and that alignment with the national policy and the Family First reforms. That will only work if we have all multi-agency partners' commitment to that shift. So I do think that, as I say, I have got in writing that commitment from the police in Devon, but I do not have that writing and commitment from the NHS. So I just think that has to be noted, linked to the fact that until we begin to support families and mental and emotional health and well-being, and it is linked in many ways to some of the escalation costs and send. When it comes to the assessment on neurodiversity pathways and our responsibilities there, I think we have to note that that is a risk.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's like me saying that, let's say Devon County Council, so everybody knows what we mean, rather than LA. And I think here, let's say the NHS, they need to be a partner in this, and if it's going to be successful. And that's respectfully, they've got challenges over their budget as we have, but. Sarah.
Because we've talked about it quite a lot, I'd like to suggest a concern added about the lack of transport. It's obviously public transport, but it does touch upon our children that are not in education, employment or training, and how that is holding back their opportunities at the moment, and how we would like to, I don't know, work collaboratively to address it. Thank you.
I think we have got let's whip down through the recommendations, Sarah, and then I think it might be that if we haven't picked it up, because there is a recommendation around school transport. So are we happy with number 3, given the advice we've just had from the Chief Executive? Lovely, thank you. So we'll go through the recommendations. Park yours, Sarah, but it might be that we need to go back, because I think she's right. We need to, because it is about fair and equal access, isn't it? So I'm not sure if we have picked that up in the recommendation or not. And it's difficult because it's almost a lobbying thing, isn't it? But
I'm just wondering if we've actually got that correct in terms of it's not just public transport access. It's the whole transport piece linked to sufficiency, linked to some of the discussions about what innovations we could develop in that space. But I would support a focus on NEET and young people's futures. I think there are a number of strands within that, I would suggest, rather than just saying public transport.
sorry, Councillor Con.
Yeah, sorry, I can read that, but are you able to make it just a little bit bigger to make it a bit easier to read? Thank you.
Chair, I still think we need to capture sufficiency, the points made by members. The example we had from Councillor Hookway about young people having to travel. So even places where there are buses, we have that travel linked to sufficiency, linked to what Councillor Bickley said about that programme of development of provision, you know, for example, 16 to 18 provision being in the right place at the right time, or hubs and so on. So I still think the link with sufficiency has to be explicitly articulated.
Yeah, I think the important bit as well is that we are listening to our youth council, and that's flowing through our decision-making process. So please make sure they're made aware of this. Can we use the microphone if we're adding,
I
just
think
so
it's
Councillor,
sufficiency specifically linked to education and learning, isn't it? Young people being able to access that learning pathway in the local communities. And at the moment, that's a challenge for us. And so young people are having to travel, and just specifically thinking about 16 to 18 proficiency, we've seen that reduction across Devon over time of that sufficiency in localities.
I mean, it's difficult because you could end up writing a book, can you, on what we've talked about this morning. But I think Councillor Bell made a really good point, and apologise if it wasn't Councillor Bell, but it is also around that wraparound, you know, if you're living in the right place with the parents in the right place, you know, the right availability, you can access all the wraparound extras. No, it was Councillor Julian. Whereas if you live in outer Heartland, you can't take part in the same. So I don't know how we bring that in, because it's difficult. Yeah, Councillor Hookway, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Considering what the Chief Executive has just said, perhaps we could ask for a general review of the impact of busing students around the county, something that is just general, starts the conversation, really gets people thinking about the impact of busing. I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Damien, did you want to come in?
Yeah, we're required to do an annual post-16 needs assessment, which we should publish by May each year. So we can use that piece of work we'll be doing anyway to include any of the elements that you want for us to look at.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. Just following on from Councillor Hookway's point, perhaps a recommendation to engage directly with Devon Youth Council about the impact on their lives of bus travel and the distance and time it takes in their day to travel to education.
Councillor Julian, online.
Yes, just a quickie. We had this at Tiverton. Their complaint was, when not with the youth council there, they complained bitterly. It just took forever. Like they said, if they want to go for further education, it took them 2 hours to get to Exeter, 2 hours to get back. That's a day's gone by the time they get settled in. And what they were looking for is, which had been mentioned, was that like Bideford railway station, you could get to Barnstaple a bit faster, and it's not ready yet. I understand that, but you see, the travel by the time they get from A to B, they just can't get the education in. So we do the transport's there, Chair, but it just takes forever to get anywhere. That's what I'm saying.
I think obviously, I think we've got two things going on here, because obviously we are looking at the budget today and the impact on the budget, but also we're hearing a clear steer that part of our work programme should be looking at transport for young people. obviously 16 to 18 is important, 19, whatever it is. But I think there's a whole lot of school age children as well that suffer as well, that they can't stay at school and take part in a music lesson or a PE lesson or whatever it might be, a sport, because the last transport leaves school at 3:30. So it may be that doesn't happen, but I think, you know, there's a bit of, just because the parent hasn't got the ability to come and pick them up an hour later. So there we are. Are we happy with the Councillor Wilson?
I was just going to suggest adding, as I said before, a concern that about the transport situation as well, because it just strengthens what I think it better reflects what we've been saying. I know we've got a recommendation, which would be to for the need for improvement in Devon's education and inclusion sufficiency along, particularly, regarding access to Devon's transport system, and that we're noting that as a concern. Probably needs slightly tweaking.
Not for me to challenge. I just want to check. I'm not going to challenge. I want to check, because I think we need these recommendations need to be budget related. Is it something that we could add to our work programme, or is that budget related? I mean, I know you could probably make it budget related, but I just wonder if it's better in our work programme as opposed to part of our budget recommendations. I'm sort of looking for advice, really. I'm being devil's advocate.
Chair, I think that's a very fair comment. I think it probably is something for you to pick up on your work programme. You're quite right. You probably could wrap it into a budget recommendation in some way, but I think you get more mileage out of it being on your work programme and properly exploring the point.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
And we can pick that up this afternoon, because I think it'll come up again in what Jack's coming to us with this afternoon. So, because it is a really good point, and I think it's important. Sorry, Councillor Lodge.
It's not on screen, but you referenced reporting back on the SEND white paper from government, but of course they're going to make announcements on foster care as well, which is likely to have budgetary implications. I think that should be on the list too.
No, it is a good point. Do you want a separate one, or do you want it added to that one? I think separate would probably better, because it doesn't get missed in a long paragraph.
In respect of that, Councillor Lodge, were you wanting a member briefing, or for that to be included within the budgetary, specifically within the budget risk assessment, just for clarity, sorry?
I was thinking of a member briefing on that, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite pressurised, isn't it, when you've got everybody watching you? Never, they're the government now, which is good. Members, there we are. I'm happy to move those welcomes, those concerns, those recommendations from the floor. So sorry, I'm from the chair. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And do we take a vote? I assume we take a vote. Yeah, and can I ask us to vote on that? That's unanimous, thank you. Excellent. So just a final thank you from me to everybody this morning. Really good session, and really appreciate everybody's involvement, and especially officers, because you never know what we're going to come up with next. But we've surprised you at times, but it's been really good, and thank you ever so much for your engagement and helpful answers. Members, great. Our first children's scrutiny budget complete. So you've earned your lunch. I think we're breaking for lunch and then back in just 2 o'clock, please. We have got a parent joining us, hopefully, that's part of the group on the first section. So if you do see not a stranger, but a lady here, please make her feel welcome. She would like to chat with you over lunch. She represents that group of residents that met with senior officers back before Christmas, I think it was. So yeah, back at 2 o'clock. Thank you all again.